Hear you.
Okay, Brian Card.
Don't start right yet because she hasn't put us on. Are we live yet? Now we can start. Go ahead.
Oh, geez, a lot of the paper.
Brian Card.
Here.
Bianca Lawrence.
Here.
Matthew Wendorf.
Here.
John Sarantopoulos.
Here.
And Keith Thurlow.
Here. Okay, we don't have no alternates to be seated. Looks like we got a full board tonight, full commission, addendums.
There's no addendums, but I did notice when I was going through the packet that the minutes were not included, so you will have to wait till next month to approve those minutes, although I have copies in case anybody wants to see them now today.
Well, I am the comma queen, so you can just lay it on
I'll
me.
get you your copy.
Okay, you want to go over the citizens' comments, please?
Citizens' comments on items not subject to a public hearing. Individual presentations not to exceed 3 minutes, limited to an aggregate of 21 minutes unless otherwise indicated by a majority vote of the commission. Note, public comments can be emailed to publiccomment@killinglyct.gov or mailed to the town of Killingley, 172 Main Street, Killingley, Connecticut, 06239, on or before the meeting. All public comment must be received prior to 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Public comment received will be posted on the town's website, www.killinglyct.gov. And then to participate in citizens' comments, the public may join the meeting via telephone while viewing the meeting on Facebook Live. To join by phone, please dial 415-655-0001 and use the access code 2630-679-4673 when prompted.
Okay.
I did get 3 letters that were sent to me in support of Weld LLC, and I will get those out to the commission. I'm not sure if they were from people from Killingly, because I had no Killingly address. It just was signed signature. And I believe the attorney has signed on. Yes, he has signed on. Mr. Blaisdell has, there he is, has signed on.
And he's an attorney for,
For Weld LLC.
okay, that's later in the agenda. Okay, did you have some mail-in for comments for Frito-Lay's applications? Wasn't there in the packet, there was some, did we need to read them in?
Those were included to you in the packet. Those are ones that were read out at the meeting.
They were already read out.
Read out at the meeting at the last one.
Okay, so there's nothing new there then.
Right.
Okay, and for the record, have any luck with the engineers for the commission?
Yes, we did. I talked to the town manager. We contacted 4 engineering firms. 2 of the engineering firms had a conflict. It went down to 2, and we selected the CLA engineers from Norwich. They were given the information. We did request that they get the information back to us, their report back to us, approximately a week before the meeting, so staff would have time to review.
And so they're not available for this meeting,
No, they're not.
so they're going to be available the January 18th meeting,
They'll be available at January 18th.
which would constitute an continuation. Is Frito-Lay agreeable to that continuation?
We haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay.
We agreed to an extension of both the site plan and the special permit.
Both applications. Okay, so this is for David Cody, Frito-Lay landowner, 1886 Upper Maple Street, GIS map 62. Oh, for the record, just somebody say his name so so Joanne, we didn't.
Joe, could you put your name on the record? This is Ken Slater, town attorney, and Mr. Hammer, Attorney Hammer, would you mind putting your name on the record?
Sure, Attorney
Thank you.
Just, is the yellow, is the green dot on, the light?
No, it's not.
Now it's Attorney Joseph Hammer.
You gotta talk, you have to talk into the microphone.
Attorney Joseph Hammer, law firm of Dave Pitney here for the applicant. Frito-Lay.
Sorry to make it so complicated.
That's okay, I forgot about the green dot.
Okay, thank you. 1886 Upper Maple Street, GIS map 62, lot 53, 94 acres, industrial zone for portion of proposed building addition that will exceed the maximum height of 50 feet for said zone with a proposed height of 86 feet, 8.5 inches. Is there anything new that Frito-Lay would like to add to this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have a presentation that we'd like to make that responds to a lot of the comments that we heard last time from members of the commission, as well as members of the public with comments and questions. And we'd also like to present to you a modification of the parking lot plan that was also in response to that. So we have a, let's see, we've got
Just move forward. We're
okay,
fine.
why don't I do that? And I guess just to also clarify, we're similar to last time, what we're presenting now can apply for either of the two applications, just for simplicity, if that's okay? Okay. Do you want to come on up? Well, actually, Sil, I guess you come up. And just to get started, as I said, we'll be addressing comments and questions from last time. We heard the comments, we considered all of the comments, and we've made some changes. The most significant change that we'll show you shortly is the expanded auto parking lot has been relocated, and as a result, it leaves undisturbed the treed and bermed area to the west of the existing auto lot. And it also minimizes visibility from Upper Maple Street. We know that that was really one of the major comments that we heard from a number of speakers, and we've responded to that. In addition, within the parking lot, we've been able to lower the lighting pole heights, which you'll see from 25 feet to 20 feet. And we've also are now using a fixture with more light control over light spillage, which you'll see. And the height of lights on the exterior of the ASRS, the automatic storage and retrieval system warehouse building wall, have been lowered as well. So tonight you're going to hear from the following. First, Scott Hesketh, who's a traffic engineer. He's the preparer of a traffic report that we submitted previously. He's going to address some questions and comments about the report that were posed last time. You're also going to hear from Sil Quinga, who's next to me. He's the Director of Engineering and Maintenance at the Frito-Lay plant in Killingly. He's going to describe actions taken by Frito-Lay over the past 1.5 years in response to sound concerns raised by some of the area residents. He's also going to review a chronological history of the resolution of the 2009 Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection odor notice of violation. Next, you're going to hear from Bennett Brooks. He's a sound acoustics expert, and he's going to talk to you about sound testing that he did at the plant back in the fall of 2020 as part of Frito-Lay's discussions with Mr. Suchi, who's a member of the Lake Association and a resident out there. That's summarized in a March 2021 report done by Mr. Brooks, which I've actually submitted a copy of, and I think you all have. And that report has also been shared with the Lake Association.
Excuse me, go ahead.
Telia, I'll get you your copies. You weren't sitting there when I was passing the copies out to everybody. I'll get them for you right now.
Mr. Brooks will also describe to you the installation of various sound reduction equipment as well.
Can we just start with the first part, because you lost me after the second name was mentioned, so just start with the first name, let him do his thing. and
Sure,
tell us.
Mr. Hesketh, next to me. So he's submitted a letter, was dated early December, which I think addresses a number of those comments that were made at the last meeting. But before he starts, I just want to Again, note that in a situation like this where the use is permitted as of right and subject only to site plan review, the Connecticut courts have indicated that consideration of traffic is limited. It's not an off-site impacts analysis as you might have with different types of applications. It's really focused on traffic circulation on the site as well as at the site entrance, entering and exiting the site. And here, no changes are being proposed in the site entrances or to the circulation in the site. But with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Hesketh.
Thank you, Joe. Good evening. My name is Scott Hesketh. I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut.
Spell
Fir-
that?
Yes, with the firm of F.A. Hesketh and Associates, and that's Hesketh. I am the author of the October 21st, 2021 traffic impact report that was submitted as part of this project. And after the last public hearing, we prepared a letter dated December 9th, 2021, addressing some of the comments and questions that members of the public and members of the commission had during that particular hearing. As you have the letter on record, I'll just go through it quickly and hit some of the points. One of the main comments by two members of the public were that it was a sloppy report. There were a number of typographical errors. I take exception to the word sloppy, but there were a handful of typographical errors in the report. In order to clarify and clean up the record, we did revise the report, took care of those typographical errors, and there is a revised text of the report dated December 9th, 2021, which has been resubmitted. So if the commission is looking to read the traffic report, the revised report has clarified the typographical errors. One of the statements that was made was that there was a report done several years ago for the Killingly Energy Center plant, and that it didn't seem that our office had taken that into account when we conducted the study for this particular development. The commission should be aware that I authored that other report as well. I did work for the NTE people, and NTE Connecticut was the developer of the Killingly Energy Center. I wrote that report, and in fact, we were very familiar with that report. And if you look at the traffic volume data in this report for Frito-Lay, due to some inconsistencies in the Department of Transportation data and due to the COVID crisis, we relied on the combined traffic volumes from that report as the background traffic volumes for this report. One, because they were significantly higher than the volumes we observed during our recent counting program. And it just seemed easier to go back and use those numbers and present them to the commission than to try to go through a long, elaborate explanation as to how we grew the traffic volumes during COVID to pre-COVID conditions. We had pre-COVID condition counts, and we used those as the background for our report. So we believe that that's an appropriate means of adjusting for the traffic and the background conditions, and that the traffic volumes during those times are significantly higher than we recently observed during our recent count program. We did describe all of the recent counts in our report. We've given you all the numbers. You can see that they're in there, and you can compare for yourselves that the 2021 data is significantly lower than the 2018 data, which is the data that we relied on. Now, subsequently, I have spoken with the folks at the Department of Transportation, and they informed me that it's their position moving forward that traffic volume counts done in this day and age will be the new normal moving forward. So although we've used the 2018 counts and they're significantly higher, the Department of Transportation said 2021 would be sufficient for counts going forward because they believe this to be the new normal. And if there are increases in future years, we'll pick those up as we move along. So we believe the traffic volumes presented in the report are conservative, and that the analysis that we presented in our report will be, it will be conservative and will overestimate the background conditions and therefore underestimate the traffic impacts of this particular development. Now, the NTE report which we prepared, the gentleman who spoke said that they had very significant concerns of the traffic volumes for that report. I'm sure he read the report. I think he presented a partial partial results of that report. When we did our report on the NTE energy plant, they have a full-time employment projection of about 30 employees. So when the plant is up and running, they've got about 30 employees on a daily basis, not very much traffic, no need to really look at the impacts of that. What they did ask us to do was to look at the construction-related impacts of that particular development, because they had I believe it was a 33-month construction program, and during the peak period of that construction program, they would have about 350 construction workers on site, and they wanted to make sure that we addressed that particular impact. And that's what our report for that development was based upon, was the construction-related traffic for that report. So when we identified any issues on local roadways, it was with that 350 employee construction-related traffic, not their full ongoing and continuing operations of that development. Now, I'm sure that leads the commission to say, well, what about the construction-related traffic here at Frito-Lay? Well, we've taken a look at that too, because we figured it would come up after just explaining that last paragraph to you. We believe that the construction here will be about 2.5 years. We'll start with a workforce of about 65 construction workers and ramp up to a high of about 420, with an average of about 200 workers over a short period of time. When the building is being completed and the outfitting internal to the building is being done, there'll be construction workers constructing the building, and people will be bringing machinery inside the building, and that will be the peak period. So we believe there'll be about 420 people on site at that particular time, and that will be the peak. But we're going to rely on carpooling and shift change to ensure that the traffic volumes from that don't exceed a maximum of 168 trips. So that the construction workers, if they all came in one vehicle, it would be 420 trips coming in. We expect that we'll be hiring small subcontractors who will have a work van. 2 or 3 people will come in a van, and we can keep the traffic impacts of the construction-related traffic during the peak period to about 168 vehicles. We'll also ensure that the construction-related traffic operates off-peak from the employee-related traffic in the remainder of the facility, so that those two traffic flows are not occurring simultaneously. And if we do that, we can keep the site-generated traffic impacts from the construction to about the same levels of the future traffic volumes for the fully operating Frito-Lay development, which is what's described in the traffic impact report, which is before you. So we believe that we have covered that particular volume of traffic, and that, as expressed in the summaries of the report, that the driveway access to and from this facility is more than capable of accommodating that volume of traffic safely and efficiently with good levels of service during peak hours. There was also some concern about Lake Road, and our report not going into great detail on the existing operations on Lake Road. There's a few reasons for that. In the KTE report, the power plant was located out on Lake Road, and we had a lot of traffic traveling up and down Lake Road. The Frito-Lay facility is located east of Lake Road, and we do not project high volumes of, 1, employee traffic on Lake Road, and 2, all of the truck-related traffic will be directed to access this facility to and from Interstate 395 using the Attenuators road access drive. So we're not projecting any increase in truck-related traffic, and a very minor increase in employee-related traffic on Lake Road. Now, the commission should be aware that in their approval for the power plant, one of the operational situations that might occur at the power plant, they operate on natural gas, so they don't have truck traffic going to and from the facility once they're in operations. If there's an interruption in natural gas to that particular facility, they're allowed to run on oil for a short period of time. And in order to ensure that oil trucks passing each other on Lake Road can do so simultaneously, they were required to make roadway improvements on the S-curve of Lake Road to widen that roadway out so that tractor-trailer trucks could pass each other in two directions if that ever becomes necessary. So although this development will have no impacts on the traffic on Lake Road, the commission should be aware that improvements should be forthcoming if the power plant ever moves to construction. As Joe has stated to you, if you read through our report, you'll see that it's our conclusion that based on the background traffic volumes, based on the projected site-generated traffic volumes from this proposed development, that the access points to and from the existing Frito-Lay facility operate at good levels of service, they'll operate safely and efficiently, and that there are no proposed modifications to those access points. And
Scott, those are the, basically, access points, the entrance to the public streets that you're referring to?
yes,
From the plant?
The two Frito-Lay plant site driveways, one to Upper Maple Street and one to Attenuators Crossing Road, both operate at good levels of service, should operate safely and efficiently, and that the existing lane arrangements are capable of accommodating the anticipated volumes of traffic without significant delays.
And in terms of the on-site traffic routing of trucks and cars, is that staying substantially the same in terms of the patterns post-addition?
Yes, I think you'll see a little later on in the presentation this evening a drawing which shows the internal site circulation. Again, we've got two existing access points to the development. One is an employee-only access to Upper Maple Street, which comes into the site and accesses the employee parking facility. The expanded parking facility is located in generally the same area, so employee traffic into and out of that site driveway, the site circulation will be very similar under the proposed conditions as the existing conditions. The second site driveway to Attenuators Crossing is mainly a truck access. There are some employees who work on the other side of the plant who use that for employee access, but it's mainly a truck access point. And again, the delivery location areas within the plant, the storage parking areas for trucks on site are in similar areas under the pre and post development conditions. So there should be no modifications to the on-site circulation. And it seems to have been operating well over the many years, and we expect that will continue to do so moving forward.
Okay, I had a couple questions. Somewhere I read that you're gonna pave over and utilize the gravel road. Could you explain that?
We're going to get to that, Mr. Chairman, later, but with the parking lot relocation, I believe the gravel road is no longer going to be paved over. It's going to remain as a gravel road. Is that correct, Brian? Okay.
So that's not part of that road. I was thinking it was the road parallel with the railroad from where the employees go in and it goes out. There's a short section that everybody connects between the truck traffic and the employee traffic. You familiar where I'm talking about?
I'm familiar with what you're talking about, and I'm going to defer to the guys have a site presentation for you, and I think they're going to...
Is or is not that section that you're talking about paving? That was the question.
Excuse me, either Brian or Sil, just to answer this question.
Speak, please. You gotta, sorry.
You're going to have to stand up at the podium. You're going to have to make sure the green light's on.
Push the button.
Just talk into it.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a truck entrance and an employee entrance, and right now there's a gravel road between those two. So it's paved up to the truck entrance as you come across Attenuators Crossing Road. I believe the intent is to maintain that as gravel in between. We want to keep a separation between employee traffic and truck traffic.
So is it left open for employees to come in either way, or?
That's part of the original gravel road that
For the
started at
right-of-way?
Attenuators Crossing Road, right? We improved that road back in 2010 to create the truck entrance, which moved the truck traffic from Upper Maple Street to Attenuators Crossing Road and gave us that entrance. It was paved up to the point of the truck entrance, but it's left as a gravel road to kind of discourage people from using that, but it is still an available way, and there's a traffic light at that crossing with the
Okay.
employee
I
entrance.
see. All right. I just want to make sure that it wasn't being paved. The other part was, you talked about bringing employees in with vans, carpooling. Does that mean that they'll be parking at other places in town and then shuttling from another parking lot, or what is the intent there?
I think the main intent is that we're hiring, I mean, we run a surveying firm, and when we send a 2 or 3 man crew out, they meet at the office, they get into the truck, and they drive to the site with all their equipment and that. So I expect that a goodly portion of the people who are coming to the site will be subcontractors. There'll be welders, there'll be
Right.
plumbers and fitters. They'll meet at the shop, and they'll come 2 or 3 in a van. And so, although we'll have 420 employees at a particular time, that we're trying to keep the volume of vehicles on site to 168. So that would be the main carpooling. There's certainly the ability to use commuter parking lots throughout the state. I wouldn't use town parking lots, but the state has many commuter parking lots up and down 395 and other locations for just such a purpose.
Typically, don't you use contractors from other states than local? I mean, I know you do use some local, but a lot of your contractors are from out of state. I see their vehicles.
Hi, my name is Brian Dotola with Haskell. We do have some subcontractors that come out of state. I wouldn't say the majority, but if they do come from out of state, and they're staying at a hotel, they can go ahead and carpool from a hotel location to the job site.
Okay. Anybody else got questions, commissioners?
Let me-
This is Joanne.
Yes, Joanne?
I'm sorry, was that Sil Quenga that answered the question about the gravel road?
Need your name,
Roger, right?
It was Roger Giesek.
Roger Giesek?
Gieseke.
Okay, thanks. And then, was that Mr. Hesketh that answered the question about the carpooling?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and then Brian Dotalo answered the last one. Thank you.
Okay. Roger, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, Keith.
All right, John?
In other words, you're going to encourage all of your contractors to carpool going into that site. Is that
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Again, Scott Hesketh for the record, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, following up on that, so encouraging versus mandating are two different things. So your report is predicated on keeping at 168 or 170 cars for construction activity, correct?
I think I said that if we maintain that level, then our capacity analysis in the other report more than accounts for that. That's correct.
Right, so what happens if they don't carpool? How are you mandating that less than 200 cars for construction activities? If you're not mandating it, should your analysis be based on the full 420?
This is Brian Dotola once again. With regards to mandating, it's going to be part of the subcontract agreement that we have with those vendors, that they can have X number of employees travel to the job site, so we can control it that way.
So it will be part of your subcontracts.
That is correct.
So how do we know or enforce that if it's part of this internal site review application for traffic flow and parking? Because we're not privy to the subcontracts.
Well, what they're offering you, actually, this is Ken Slater for the record. As Attorney Hammer had mentioned, that with a permitted by right use, you don't have any control over traffic volumes. And that's considered as part of your regulations, that the use, and that would include, construction necessary to establish the use, is really outside of your purview. If they've agreed to a condition, then it would be a matter of just making sure the applicant concurs that staff, as part of a condition of approval, and Attorney Hammer, a representative of Frito-Lay, could give permission for zoning enforcement to enter the site and to do an inspection. So it is possible to do that if the applicant agrees to it.
Right, but also what Attorney Hammer did say is that, according to his opinion, is that we have the right to look at the traffic going in and out of the site from the driveways. If this analysis is based on less than the 420, which is the peak for construction periods, then we need to be able to verify that number.
What the Attorney Hammer was referring to is what you do have authority in ordinary site plan review when you've established a use is permissible is to make sure that the access is safe, so the design is safe. So if we're talking about pure numbers, then the applicant can offer something that you might not be able to specifically require. And they're doing that by saying they're going to include that in their subcontract. So I think to your main point of enforcement, that the way in which to do that would be to get authorization that you'd be able to have a zoning enforcement officer, go on site to just do those kinds of counts. But in terms of safety, you need to be persuaded by Mr. Hesketh or the team that the design either hasn't changed or is safe for the purposes of ingress and egress, and also on-site traffic is safe.
Okay. So my next question has to do with your permitting, your OSTA permitting process. So that has not started yet, correct? Or I don't know if it has not. According to your report, you have not. It doesn't say whether you applied for the application or not.
This is kind of, we have made an application to OSTA for the administrative decision, yes.
Okay, so we don't know inclination one way or another whether or not that's going to be approved as is, or?
I have not received any substantial comments from them related to the development as of this point.
That's related to which, is it both drive, both access, both the employee access and the truck access, or is it?
Well, the Office of the State Traffic Administration has jurisdiction over state highways.
Yep.
Neither Attenuators Crossing Road or Upper Maple Street are state highways. But since the development has in excess of 100,000 square feet, they do regulate it for impacts to state highways. So that's what that's what OSTA will be reviewing, is impacts on the state highway system.
So they would be looking how far, for a better term, I'll say down gradient.
They generally look at intersections where you have in excess of 50 new vehicle trips.
Yep.
So we've given them information, including the highway ramps, 395 and all the way down to Route 101.
And do any of those have in excess of 50 new trips?
The reason we gave them information is because, yes, they met that threshold criteria of 50 additional trips.
So they'll evaluate the impact on those and decide
That's
whether
correct.
the additional upgrades need to be happening.
That's correct.
Because you do have, I think, one was southbound, 395 southbound intersection where the level service, even though it stays in F, does considerably change, correct?
Yes, the 395 southbound ramp, if it's reviewed as a single lane approach, which it is striped at, yes, it is level service F, but it operates mainly as a 2-lane approach. We're not proposing any improvements at that particular location, but the DOT may decide that restriping it or doing something may be appropriate, but we're waiting on that.
Okay. And can you go over the methodology for the on-site trip counts for me, please? Because it looked like you used the IT method, right, and analyze that with your actual counts that you did on-site for vehicle traffic?
Yes, we did turning movement counts of both of the site driveways during the peak hours. We compared the volumes that we got there to the ITE trip generation results based on the number of employees, also based on the square footage of the development. It appeared that the ITE numbers based on the number of employees more closely resembled the traffic volumes which we counted out in the field. Based on that, we projected the increase in site-generated traffic based on the projected level of employees for the expanded development. And we used that projected volume as the total site-generated traffic for the site. So even though the counts that we took were slightly less than the ITE for the background conditions, we assumed that the projected ITE numbers for the full build was the increase in traffic, and we added that volume of traffic to the roadway network.
For the employees, vehicles?
That's
right?
correct, yes.
Why does that not apply to the truck count? Did you do a truck count? Because the truck numbers seem awfully low for, we're having 700 some odd parking spaces for trucks, tractor trailers on site. But the truck count was very, very low in your study.
Well, we didn't count trucks independently, okay, but we did run the ITE trip generation for trucks based on, again, both the square footage of the facility and the number of employees, and we added the volume of trucks. Now, those are peak hour volume trucks. Generally speaking, in this type of development, you really don't want a lot of trucks arriving when your employees are coming and going to the facility. So hopefully your trucks are off-peak of your employees. So it might be one reason why the truck volume looked low in the report. We're looking at the the impacts of the peak hour of traffic, and that's when the employee volumes are high, not necessarily the truck volumes.
All right, I'm just
So-
curious, how does that compare to actual truck counts from the facility? I mean, I assume Frito-Lay has records of how many trucks get shipped on a daily basis.
I'm
on an
sure,
hourly
I'm sure they
basis.
do.
Did you look at that?
We did,
compare
I
those
did, I
numbers?
did not run through those numbers.
I'm curious how those are compared to your numbers, because my gut tells me there's more trucks than what your analysis is showing. Given just you got 700 vehicles on site, I'm assuming they ship more than, it was like 30 some odd vehicles on peak trip, right? So I'm curious how those numbers compare from actual truck count versus what your analysis has.
We'll talk to the team and see if we can get that data and provide it for you.
Okay, because I'm assuming that may change your analysis depending on what you have. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Keith, can I ask another question?
Okay, I'm looking, go ahead.
Go ahead.
If it's deemed that improvements need to be made off of 395, who's responsible for that? Is it Frito-Lay or would the state pick
Well,
that up?
if the Department of Transportation and the Office of the State Traffic Administration deem that improvements are necessary, it would be the responsibility of the applicant or the developer to make said improvements.
And one other thing, it seems to me that the traffic manager would, I mean, that's a part of his responsibility, the logistics, would schedule trucking, not to conflict with the peak hours of shift changes and everything. So that would be, he would be a good source, it would seem, that could tell you, what that mix is with employees versus the trucks going in and out of that facility.
Well, certainly research the files and get the information.
So my last question, and you may not have this one, but it was actually in the write-up, and Keith, I don't know if this is what you're referring to, but it talked about the existing gravel drive on the west side of the property would be temporarily improved to accommodate raw material deliveries. So is that the different gravel drive that
That's
you're
what I was
referring to?
talking, no, that's what I was talking.
So where, I don't know, we'll get to that in the site plan. Where's that gravel drive? How's that being accessed? Does that change on-site flow? I think that, so I was confused too, where that gravel driveway was on the west side of the property to be used for raw material deliveries during construction.
It's the current gravel drive that is east of the railroad tracks that runs north-south. That's the gravel road that we're referring to. And we're talking about putting millings on that road to allow potato trucks to run down that area on a temporary basis during the course of construction.
Can you remember to point that out in the site plan for us when you look at traffic patterns?
Yes, we can point that out.
Because then it says it's going to be reseeded afterwards.
It's not
No longer.
anymore, right? That's not any longer, I believe, based on the revised parking lot location. I think it's going to be left as a gravel.
Yeah, I'm more curious where it is and how it affects traffic flow.
Okay.
And, I mean, so, because again, it doesn't sound like it's going to remain a driveway. It sounds like it's going to be reseeded in grass is what it says.
We'll cover that when we get to that
Okay.
part of the PowerPoint.
Okay.
You really need to stand up, I mean, anytime you participate in a conversation, just for the record. Anne Marie, just for the record, I'm getting to me, could you introduce who this is so we know who is present?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is our new liaison, town council liaison.
Hi.
And I'm not exactly sure how to say your name. I haven't heard it pronounced correctly.
Ula.
Ula.
We're the Estonian club.
Ula.
Thanks,
I am sorry. I should have introduced that. I
I should
apologize.
have asked earlier. I'm sorry, so we can continue. Next, are you complete? Anybody else want any
I'm through with
questions?
any traffic information. I will be here for the remainder of the evening. If anything else pops up, I'll be happy to jump back up and do my best to answer.
Coffee and donuts later?
If you give me 15 minutes, I can be back.
So
Okay, Mr. Hammer.
we're going to go to Sil Quinga next, the Director of Engineering and Maintenance at the site. And I just wanted to note for you, we submitted to you the report that Mr. Hesketh did for state OSTA. So, even though it goes beyond the scope of a site plan review, we wanted to share that with you so you were aware of what we had submitted. Mr. Quenga, as we get into
Spell that
this,
again, please.
Quenga.
I'm Sil Quinga, the engineer at the Frito-Lay
Is
plant.
that SYLCIL?
It's short for Silvino, so SIL. Right up right there.
Okay, Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank
So-
you.
So he's going to cover two things with you. He's going to talk about odor and the state DEP, and he's going to talk about some noise reduction efforts as we probably go to the next slide, Sil. And
All
if
right,
you-
next slide, please.
Do you want to just maybe describe what your function is first, so everybody knows?
All right, so I'm the Director of Engineering and Maintenance of the plant. So that means all things capital, meaning the improvements, the expansions, automation, controls, integration, environmental, permitting, exterior communications, along those lines, from the wastewater plant to, well, starting at our cogen plant, everything in between, all the way down to the wastewater plant on the far end.
How trucks park?
There you go.
Same thing?
Yep.
Okay.
So it's all my fault.
Do you like them to advance the slides?
Next slide, please. All right. First off, a little bit of history along the odor point complaints. It was brought up during the previous planning and zoning meeting. So basically, back in we received a notice of violation for some odor back in 2009. The plant worked with. So we worked with DEEP through this process to close out that NOV. Through the process, we worked in a call-in process. We also partnered with environmental consultant TRC to undertake the odor study of the plant. The odor study was completed. Following that, it was submitted to the DEEP. We met with DEEP and discussed the solutions and gained alignment on the next steps. The site implemented those engineering changes. DEEP reviewed and inspected those engineering changes, and that resulted in the closure of the NOV in August of 2011. Since then, going through our records, we've received a total of three separate odor complaints. Back in 15, smell coming from the plant complaint. Remember Paul Saffin, some of you might know, that 6'7" gentleman. He responded to that complaint back then. And then when I was here, I got here in 2014. I got here, and then 2019, we received a complaint for a burning oil smell. We kind of thought that may be coming from the asphalt plant. Ended up being a few houses down, so I went and put some new sealer on their driveway. And then in 2021, received a stale odor smell complaint. For all these complaints, there was Paul Saffin or Heather, and they had direct communication with the individuals that did the complaints. So typically what we'll do is we get a complaint, Paul and now Heather would go out to that specific area, see what they could do there, and at the same time follow back up to the plant to see if there was any disruptions in operations or something like that that might tie to those complaints.
And I just want to mention, we submitted, and I think Anne Marie distributed to all of you a copy of that NOV as well as a copy of the closure letter from the state. So you should have that.
That
The
was,
acronym means what, NOV?
Notice of violation.
Okay, thank you.
those were in your area where you sit. When you came in. It wasn't in part of your packet, but he handed those to me today.
Excuse me, I didn't quite understand it. Where were they?
They're
On the packet here?
They weren't in your packet, they
Okay.
were off to the side.
Okay, thank you.
Has there been, just out of curiosity, has DEEP ever come out since 2011 to the site for any reason?
We get inspections by DEEP every year, from our wastewater system to stormwater systems. Folks from DEEP are multimedia trained now. That happened, I want to say, about 4 or 5 years ago. So, for example, our annual wastewater auditor would also be trained for other areas under DEEP's purview. So we get quite a few audits.
So no one's ever commented yea or nay on yes or no, everything's going well, no odors, no nothing?
None of our visits have resulted in any odor issues.
Okay. But they didn't comment in the positive either?
No.
Okay. They never did, just
Anybody else?
Yes. What about this oil slick? You know, this vegetable oil on the surface of the lake? Has that been addressed?
Short of the meeting from the last planning and zoning meeting, we do not have any recorded events of
Well,
complaints
there
of oil
was.
slicks.
In our packet, we received,
That was a public comment that was given last month, and I gave you hard copies of them. So that was brought forth last month.
that was brought back forth last week, yeah.
Correct. We don't have, we have no issues reported to the, as far as we know, to the town or to the state in reference to anything to that nature.
So nobody ever filed a complaint then concerning,
No complaints, and we have no records of any phone-in
Okay.
complaints as well. So there, think if there's 3 levels of complaints. We have someone complaining to the state, someone may complain to the town, or we get to direct calls to us. For example, those 3 odor complaints were direct calls to us that we respond to.
there was another comment made at last month's meeting concerning the fact that you stated that the latest sound abatement machinery was going to be put on the building, and one of them responded, well, why don't you put that on the existing buildings? So it sounded, you made it sound as if there was something new out there, new technology that could dampen the sound even further.
Okay, we're starting to lead into our next section of slides, so don't mean to turn you off, sir, but I can follow up on that one in just a minute if we
Okay,
could
that'd be fine.
procedure-wise close out the odor one first.
Anybody else questions on the odor or smell? Nothing? Staff?
Nothing.
Move on then, sir.
All right. All right, in reference to some sound complaints that we've received, so the one that was brought up during the last meeting, up on the board right there. So in the summer of 2020, Mr. Suchi made the phone call into the plant in reference to noise complaint. So what we did there is Heather and actually Roger over here, they did go and they met with Mr. Suchi. Mr. Suchi even took him out on the boat so we could actually visually hear what exactly he was listening to. From that noise complaint, then we look at our site and see if we can have an idea of what was going on. And we started to focus in on some of our starch drying equipment. So part of our resource conservation effort is we do recycle the starch water that comes off when you slice a potato. Part of that recycling operation is drying of that starch, and we determined that primarily the noise was coming from there. That said, we're not professional noise people, right? We just use our Mark 1 Mod 0 ears. So we brought in Brooks Acoustics to do a sound survey and help us really, I'll call it engineer-wise, identify the source of the higher sound that was reported from the lake. Mr. Brooks completed his analysis and determined that the sound levels were consistent with applicable sound regulations. All right. That said, being good neighbors, we looked to say, how can we actually get the sound a little quieter? So we asked Mr. Brooks for some recommendations. We got those. And then from those recommendations, wrote a capital project through PepsiCo, got the funds, and then ordered the equipment to install. I have more slides following this that go through this install. So if we can go to the next slide, I'll follow through that process. All right, so first off, as we finished with the noise complaint, we're looking at our site, had to figure out where it was going on. So we determined it was coming from our starch system. That seemed to be the louder operation. So first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that things are operating as per design specifications. So we went through that whole process and to make sure everything was working well. Also in the fall, I think of this late fall time frame, we also put up some sound absorbing mats. All right. Again, this is before all the engineering was done, but we said, hey, let's do something to try to lower the sound. So everything looked pretty good. So then we had to move on to our next phase of engineering, getting more in depth with the OEM or original equipment manufacturer. Next slide, please. So working with our sound engineer and the OEM of the equipment, We came up with a few additional things. What we're looking at here is acoustic covering that we put on the starch dryer blowers. All right, and that was completed. And next slide, please. And a couple other things you can see up on the stacks is one, we put some elbows on the top of the stacks to divert the sound to the east, away from the lake. And the last thing we just put in a few weeks ago was the sound attenuators. Think of those as sound engineered mufflers, if you will. The existing system has 2 of these already, right after the blowers, and these are addition to the existing sound attenuators that were originally on the system. It took a little while to get these in, primarily with the supply chain issues around COVID and things. So we all hear about how Christmas presents may not get here. I can say from the industry standpoint, we've been fighting supply chain issues with machine parts and fabrications for a lot longer than what we currently hear. What questions do you have? Now, in reference to your question, our sound engineer will be on after me to talk a little more about the Phase 2 expansion in reference to how we look at engineering for the new systems that we're putting in.
And he's also going to talk about his 2 noise testings that he did, one in the fall of 20 before this equipment was added, and then one just last week after the final piece was added. So he'll discuss that with you.
Yeah, and I can say after we put the sound attenuators on, it made a drastic drastic change in what I could hear down from the potato receiving yard. It was a immediate difference that we noted. Much improved.
Questions, anybody? Okay.
Should we move on to our next? So next on the video is going to be Bennett Brooks, who's a noise acoustics expert, president of Brooks Consulting. You should have, all of you, 3 documents related to what you're going to hear now. The first is the resume and qualifications of Mr. Brooks. The second is a March 2021 summary of his first noise tests from the fall of 2020, and then the third piece is his summary from just last week from the most recent testing. So if, are you on, Bennett?
Yes, Joe.
Thank you, and I guess if you could just start by briefly describing your background in the noise acoustics field.
Sure. Thanks, Joe, and thank you to the commission for allowing me to visit with you via the Zoom technology here. I appreciate that. Yeah, about myself, I think you may have the short form bio that was submitted in your packet that describes my firm and my career, myself, quite a bit. But just simply, I've been doing this for over 40 years. My college degree is in mechanical engineering, and then my master's degree is in acoustical engineering, and I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut, and also have a lot of, in order to do this job, I feel you need to be part of the larger community of technical people. So I've been involved in the Acoustical Society of America. I'm a fellow, and I currently serve on the executive board for the Acoustical Society, member of the Institute of Noise Control Engineering, and our firm is a member of the National Council of Acoustical Consultants, of which I was president about a decade ago, so I'm a past president. They keep you busy. It's kind of a life sentence, so I enjoy it, and that's how we keep current with the technology as it's changing. We stay involved in the professional society. So As far as land use planning, I've probably been to hundreds of Planning and Zoning Commission hearings and addressed questions such as you have tonight. So in order to, any questions on that? Okay, thanks. In order to address the situation or concerns that were voiced to Frito-Lay by some of the neighbors, we did several studies. Now, I've been involved in this facility for about a dozen years on various projects. So they called me in and said, you know, we've been having some complaints recently, and what do you think? So we did an engineering study, as Sil already mentioned, in October 2020, and we did property line testing on the west property line, and also a lot of studies on roof equipment, rooftop mounted equipment, and particularly the starch recovery system, which Sil identified as being a suspect, and we did acoustical sound testing, and I did identify the starch indeed as being the dominant sound generator in that area. I don't know if you want me to try to share the screen. I don't know if you can see the screen, but I can. I have an aerial photo that I can show. I'm sure. Is that something we can do?
You should be able to do it. If you signed on
Okay,
through
I'll
WebEx,
hit-
you should be able to share
I'll-
the screen.
I'll hit the share screen.
It should be the button near the bottom of your screen. There we
Okay.
go.
Are you seeing that picture?
Yes.
Okay, so this is an aerial photo of the plant and the surrounding area, courtesy of Google Earth. And you can see some of the major features around. You can see the Alexander Lake, of course. You see the plant to the east of that. Further to the east is I-395, and then some of the major roads in the area, which include Upper Maple, just to the west of the plant and east of the lake. So the location that we did the property line test was on the, we presumed, west property line of the plant. And just to, so we kept all of our testing for this round at the plant. Previously, some years ago, I had done some handheld, just walking around type tests across the road, just staying on the right of way on the road, short tests. And we noticed a difference between the background that would be attributable to the plant at the property line and at the road. So we knew that would be it would be lower across the road, but just for this study, it was an engineering-based study, so we kept everything at the plant. If I scroll down in the report, which I believe you may have in your packet, I can go up to the top page here. You see the report dated March 8th. So this is the one I believe you have in your packets. I'll go back down, show you the aerial, and then this is the location. So I'll just slowly scroll through these pictures. You can see the sound analyzer mounted on a tripod, and it's at the location of above the railroad tracks, next to a rubble wall. And my land use and survey observations that I've made are is that the old farmers who piled the rocks up knew where their property line was. So this rubble wall has probably been there for a while, and so that's the location that I assumed was the property line, and it looked pretty close. It may be a few feet one way or the other, but it's probably pretty close. So these are photos of the test, if you look down, you can see across the road to the lake. And there's a couple other views of that. So, and you can see the tracks down below. So, in order to establish what was going on that could affect the neighbors, we took this position here at the property line, and while we were also doing sound tests at the plant. And the results of this kind of test look something like on the next slide, which is a time history, sound level, measured sound level at that location. So what the analyzer does is it takes a sound sample continuously, and this was about a 15-minute sample. And what it does is it records all of the acoustical parameters, the sound level, the frequency spectrum. It records all of the statistical type levels, and it does that each second. So it's a 1 second interval plot that you're looking at. And you can see the red line is the sound level that was measured over that 15-minute period. And the higher levels, I don't know if you can see my mouse moving around the cursor, but the higher levels relate to vehicles passing by on Upper Maple Road. And the lower levels are between where cars and trucks are traversing the road. So especially in this low area here on the right side, that was roughly between 2:44 and 2:45 p.m. in the afternoon on that date. You can see that, well, there weren't very many vehicles in the immediate vicinity, but what we're measuring there is sound that would be coming from the Frito-Lay plant, and then any other activities that are in the area. Everything gets picked up by the microphone. So there's distant traffic, there's birds, there's distant voices in the area, and no traffic on Upper Maple Street at that time. So we take a look at that, and we use a statistical measurement that is called the L90, or 90th percentile level. L for level, 90 for 90th percentile. And that's what's defined by the state of Connecticut as the background sound. So we say, well, that's going to be not entirely due to the plant, but it's going to be fairly close, and it's also going to add in any traffic that's on 395 and other areas and things going on in the neighborhood, like weed whackers or lawnmowers and so on. But we said, okay, for our purposes, let's call that equivalent to the plant sound level. And so you can see that's that blue dotted line at the bottom. And at that particular time, we were measuring at the property line 52.7 for that. And again, it has other contributions, but for this particular test, we were doing an investigation, sort of a diagnostic test, and we blamed that on the plant. So let's see what difference it makes when we change the configuration of the starch blowers. And here's another example. When we turned off blower number 1 and kept blower 2 running, that level dropped a bit. You can see the cars are still there. There's a dump truck and so on, but we try to glean the information that we can statistically from that total period. And so it dropped a bit when we turned number 1 off. And likewise, when we turned them both off, it dropped down to 47.3 statistically, noting that when there was no traffic at all, it went as low as 46.6. So we could say, well, okay, no local traffic, we've got the plant, we've got, other neighborhood activity. So the plant is probably, without the starch blowers, in the, 47 area, plus or minus, at the property line, and then drop a little bit more once it crosses the street. So that's the data that we took in October, and based on that and other data that we took at the plant, we embarked on the sound control design study. Before I move on to that, does anybody have any questions on this part? Okay, let's see if I can pull up the other. Let's see, move it over here. Move things around just a moment. Okay, so good. I hope everybody can see this next slide. By the way, for the record, I know you're taking a recording. I should have given my address, Brooks Acoustics, 35 Talcottville Road, Suite 31 in Vernon, Connecticut. Anyway, this latest MO, a project letter, identifies and documents the testing that we did last week on the 15th of December. And I had the opportunity to be on site when the silencers that Sil showed you on his slide that were mounted in the stack, the two stacks, starch recovery stack 1 and starch recovery stack 2, when they were installed. So we were able to get a series of tests, turning the recovery system on and off. While one stack was being installed, we stopped the construction process, and we did not want anything else, other machinery contaminating what was coming out. So we would know, we would have a clean view of what we were getting. And as Sil pointed out, there were sound control blankets which were installed on the recovery blower housings, and we also installed the silencers. So I showed you a picture of that. This is down here in this table is a summary of the sound levels at that particular time on the west property line, that same location that you saw earlier. And with both stacks on and no silencers, we were up to about 53.9 for that same LA weighted 90. The A means human hearing. So that's the scale that the state uses in its regulations in the town and everybody. So the LA 90 was 53.9 with both stacks on, no silencers. So okay, let's try another one. We'll turn stack 2 off. Because we were going to install that silencer. So we turned the stack off, and it dropped to 50.9 at the property line. Next, and that's green because it indicates that we're consistent with the state regulations at the property line, even though it has to be at the residence to be an official state measurement. But we're closer, so. If you go farther away to the houses or on the lake or anywhere that's farther, the sound level will drop. So we feel pretty comfortable and confident knowing that, if we're meeting the, consistent with the regs at the property line, then we're going to be in better shape in other locations. So the next set of tests was for with stack 1 and 2 on, but stack 1, or excuse me, only stack 2 had the silencer because that was just put in. So it went back up a couple of tenths to 51.1, saying that. So what that tells me is that, well, the silencer is doing pretty well, because remember, this is the entire plant and all of the background sound in the neighborhood being measured here. The next step was to run stack 2 only while stack 1 was down getting fitted with its silencer, and that dropped to 50.1. And then finally, we ran both stacks with silencers, and it went up a tenth. So 50.2. And again, these are, engineering numbers, not not official tests at a residence, but they give us a very good indication that we would be compliant. So that is the summary of the tests that we have done most recently with the most recent sound equipment that we put at the plant. Do we have any questions on this piece?
I have a question, if I may.
Yep.
Okay.
So-
Well, then, I will just.
No, I
leave that
have a
there.
question.
Yes?
Hold on,
Question?
there's someone here with a question. Virgo, make
Okay.
sure your mic's on and talking to the mic.
It's on, I'll talk into it. Anyway, looking at the column with the numbers in it, starting from 53.9 down to 50.2, is
Can
there
you
a way?
speak up, please, right into the mic?
We can't hear.
Okay, the worst number and the best
Better.
number in the right-hand
Yes.
column, those are just numbers. Is there some way that you can describe what a 53.9 sounds like versus a 50.2? Those are just numbers to almost all of us. And so, can you say something like the first one sounds like a screaming teapot and the second one sounds like, a dove cooing? I don't know. I need verbs to describe this situation.
Okay, well, that's a great question, and thanks for bringing that up. Just to put a little more everyday reality into this, they're all actually pretty close. 54, say, being 4 more than, say, roughly 50, is a noticeable difference, but it's not a really large difference. But it is definitely noticeable. And all of these levels are, I'm going to try to, it's like a very quiet voice talking. I don't know if you heard me whispering into my microphone here, but the 50 to 55 sound level range is the sound of a quiet voice, almost a whisper. You get down to the lower end, it's more of a whisper, closer to a whisper. But a normal speaking voice would be 10 or 15 decibels higher than that. So this is the sound of a very quiet voice. In nature, you can easily get 53.9 on a summer evening with crickets all around you. It might be inside your house. It might be, if you have a quiet one, it might be your refrigerator kicking on constantly. But it's not like a screaming tea kettle or, maybe closer to the cooing dove. About 4 houses away, or maybe 3 houses.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question regarding when the recordings were done and stuff. So my question basically is, does the frequency affect the audible perception of people? So if it's a low frequency at a low decibel, is there potential that is more easily audibly perceived than a higher frequency at a low decibel? I'm just asking because I know equipment, the frequency range, I'm sure, varies pretty significantly, but is a lower frequency more perceivable farther away than a higher frequency or something along those lines at the same decibel rating?
Well, in general, that's a good question. Good question. In general, we use the A weighting system, which, if you can imagine, a curve that's set up. I don't know if I can get to it quickly from here, but I'll just describe it. It's like turning the bass knob down from what the microphone hears compared to what the human ear hears. So the human ear, compared to a microphone, is like taking your bass knob on your stereo and turning that down. Because the ears are not as sensitive to the low frequencies. I think you're talking about the pitch and the frequency of the sound.
Yeah, I just didn't know if the decibel rating, even though it was lower, could still be
affected by the frequency coming from the plant, I didn't know
Well-
if it was a higher frequency, that it would be less audible at that same distance, that's all.
Well, it does apply, I think, in this case, because prior to putting the silencers on, there was a measurable, and I think audible to some folks, kind of a low hum that was coming from the starch system. And the silencers were designed to remove that from the stack air. So that's what they were designed to remove that low hum. So in this case, yes, the after would be less noticeable, I think, than the before situation, because we removed that not exactly a tone, but sort of a pitch in the low hum area. So in answer to your question, I think you're correct. Yes, that was part of the design of this sound reduction system, was to get rid of that low hum. So I think we accomplished that here. And then, everyone notices things differently. Probably the most, noticeable or way to describe your perception, and if you notice the sound, is what, if you're focusing in on it. And the way you would focus on it would be to try to, concentrate on it. And if there is a background sound like traffic on the road, it'll be harder to notice. If it's the middle of the night, and let's say you're out on the lake in a boat, it might be easier to notice because the background sound will be low. Even though the level itself is way down in numbers, it could possibly be noticeable just because the background that's competing with that sound, for example, doesn't mask it as much. It may be, if you see what I mean? So,
Yeah.
if a lot of people are talking, it's hard to hear one person talk. But if everyone is being quiet, then it's easier to hear one person talk.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay,
If I could ask that question, please.
Sure.
What about the water effect, the lake? What does that do to sound?
That's a good question. The water reacts to sound waves basically like it's hard. It's hard. It's almost like concrete. So if you were transmitting a sound across a parking lot, say, it would be similar to that because it's hard. It will still attenuate with distance, but it's not going to attenuate with what we would get on land with soil and plants, other vegetation, trees, break up the sound more than just the distance. With the water, it's, you're not going to get much absorption of the sound by the water. So it will seem to travel a little bit farther because it's not encountering vegetation, but it still drops with distance. It drops 6 decibels per doubling of distance. So if you go from, just mathematically, if you go from 100 feet out to 200 feet, your sound level from a single source is going to drop 6 decibels because that's a doubling of distance. And same, again, if you go from 200 feet to 400 feet, it drops another 6 and so on. So you still get the distance effect, but with the lake, you don't get the extra absorption, or what we call excess absorption from the ground.
Thank you.
So to try to put it in context, the sound level at Upper Maple Street will be a higher level and much higher level than it would be on the west side of the lake. That's not to say that there are some days when, you might hear something, We've all heard stories about the very still morning at, at sunrise when there's no wind and there's, the temperatures are just right and we can hear somebody frying bacon in a campsite across the lake. And, so that may happen. You can hear the bacon. But the levels will be much reduced from where they are on the east side of the lake.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm just going to ask Mr. Brooks if you're done with that, please continue if you have anything else on this testing. But once you're done, if you could then talk about the expansion and efforts that will be taken to ensure that the plant will continue to comply with the noise standards.
Yes, I can do that. I'm going to see if I can get over here and go back to full screen somehow. Okay, and then I may be able to stop sharing somehow. Get to that button. If you looking for it. Active speaker thumbnail, speaker video.
You should
if you
see
can-
an orange button
Oh, here
way
we
at
go.
the top.
There it is. That was up at the top. Thank you. Found the orange. Thank you very much. Okay, yes, so thanks, Joe. I think you've seen the overall plan for the plant expansion. It's going to include the Cheeto line, I believe. And so we have production equipment, we have a storage area, and we have environmental controls, basically mechanical systems, heating and air conditioning systems. So of those three things, what we intend to do is model the entire system in our acoustic modeler, which is, I guess, more extensive version of what we did just for the starch system. And then what we do is we have a listing of all the equipment that's been provided by the vendors as the potential equipment that's being planned for the facility, and they all have sound signatures. And so we put them in a computer model in their locations where they're going to be on the site, and then project the sound from each piece of equipment to wherever we want, especially the nearest neighbor location. So that's how it will be analyzed. Cutting to the answer right away, our intention is to engineer this as part of the design and construction team, such that if we need a silencer on a stack, for example, such as you saw for the starch system, that will be included in the equipment specifications. And so that will be installed when the plant is being built. And so we're designing and engineering this for sound control from the very beginning. And what that means is, we have different areas that we want to address. For example, the storage system, the storage retrieval system is all indoors. That is going to be quiet on the outside. We've dealt with a lot of them for various clients from the U.S. Postal Service, has a large facility in Wallingford. Probably familiar with lots of retailers have these, like LL Bean, and had a big conveyor system. There'll be a little train involved here, but everything is going to be indoors. So as long as the building itself, which we believe will be sufficient and certainly more than adequate to contain that sound inside, there's no no issues with the storage part. It will have air conditioning units on the roof, and those will also be treated so that their sound levels will be low. And similarly, in the production side, we will do the same thing with that equipment. The good thing about the equipment side, from the viewpoint of the town, is that that is further away from the residents. It is behind the existing plant. So we have two benefits there. One of extra distance to the property line and beyond. And number two, we're behind an existing plant. So a lot of that equipment is going to be behind essentially the existing plant, which acts like a big sound wall to block it. And that's, I think, just the summary of where we're in the midst of that process now. So I don't have a slide to show you on that, but again, it's our intention to meet all codes and regulations for this plant addition.
And Bennett, if I could just ask you, based on your experience with sound and acoustics, your familiarity with the plant and your familiarity with manufacturing equipment, are you confident that, with your input during that equipment selection and build process, that the expanded plant will comply with the applicable noise standards?
Yes, I'm very confident about that. And that, is the intention of the plant owners, and I believe we can follow through with that.
Mr. Bennett, what about on the top of the ASRS building, all the mechanicals that'll be on top of that? Do you have any kind of ideas on, as far as controlling of those noises, or what decibel levels you might expect them to be? I mean, seeing you're proposing 88 feet tall or 86 feet, whatever it is.
Yes.
How they might carry.
Yeah, there'll be mechanical systems, and they'll have some sound associated with them. The first thing to do is to buy quiet, and so, selecting the equipment that's, one model, maybe the train may be quieter than the York or possibly the Carrier and that sort of thing. So we're going through that selection process. And also, if it turns out that we need some barriers, we've done that before at Frito-Lay. We have erected a sound wall on the roof in the potato chip production area. And some of you may be familiar, that was a few years ago. So that treated any issues that would be with rooftop equipment. So there are several avenues that we can use to treat it. It's definitely technically possible.
About, I mean, it's hard to say, but how tall a wall would that be?
Well, if you have let's say you have a 6-foot, 8-foot rooftop unit, you'd want to have a wall that was, in the neighborhood of 10 or 12 feet. So, we haven't run all of those models yet, so I really can't show you those results today. But we're confident that, once we have everything in the model, and all of the equipment that's being selected, and any substitutions that may be made, they all have to be handled such that in the end everything adds up at the property line to be within code. And it's a process where you say, okay, each piece of equipment requires, well, it may not require anything. Certain smaller fans won't need any silencing, but some of the bigger ones will. So each piece gets its customized sound equipment.
So this is vague, I know, but I'm just trying to get ideas. If you had a piece of mechanical equipment such as AC units or whatever kind of mechanical device with fans on it up there, and hypothetically it's 10 feet long, about how far would you go beyond that with your wall? What would I expect? So would your
Well-
wall be 5 or 10 feet longer, or just a foot longer?
Well, you'd want to, have it on probably 2 or 3 sides, like we have up on the current roof, on the existing roof. And let's see if I can pull out some sound data here. We have a lot of different processing equipment. There are, certain, to answer the rooftop question, basically, where the sound is coming out, it may not be at the top of the unit, it may be coming from the bottom of the unit. What you want to do is you want to take a hypothetical laser shot and shoot that to the, from that piece of equipment to wherever the receiver would be, either the property line or a residence, and say, okay, I want to cut that laser line by, say, 3 feet. So if the piece of equipment was emanating sound at a 5-foot level, then we would want an 8-foot high barrier on the roof. And that's kind of what we did. So I think what you're probably getting at is, how high is this going to be? I can't tell you today how high any barriers are going to be. We have not settled on that yet. But the other way of doing it is, placement of the equipment. You put the higher level or noisier equipment, louder equipment, if you will, towards the east side of the plant, and the quieter stuff on the west side of the plant. So lots of methods that can be used to customize this so that it meets all the regs, and that's what we're going to do.
So
Let
would
me
it-
take another example. There's some corn product blowers that have to be installed. Those are going to be installed at ground level behind the existing plant, and they come with enclosures. So there's going to be a unique sound level enclosure for that piece of equipment, and there are a few of those that fall in that category. So not only will it get the benefit of its sound enclosure because people are going to be working around there, and we don't want it to be loud, but then it's behind the building and it's farther away. So we run all of those calculations, and that tells us where we're at, and then we apply a safety margin, small safety margin, to make sure that for any variability, we will meet the regs. And so that's where we are in the engineering process at this point.
Okay.
This is Silquenga. From the site's perspective, our plan is to design it in, right? So when we work with Mr. Brooks to get the sound data and information, I don't know if you can hear me, the plan would be to ensure that we put the appropriate equipment on the roof so we don't have to put in secondary sound isolation. In other words, get the AC unit that's quiet so I don't have to put a wall in, right? That said, right, my experience is the newer units are very quiet. A lot of that just has to do primarily with resource conservation efficiencies, right? When you look at the insulation value and those types of things, it also makes your units a lot quieter. Think of it, whenever something makes a lot of noise, that typically means it's inefficient because you're making noise instead of turning a shaft or something along those lines. That said, so the intent is to engineer it out up front, right? If things can't be engineered out up front, for example, Mr. Brooks did talk about for example, an unload blower type system, right? Those will come with enclosures, right? Again, design it on the front end so you don't have to do the corrective action on the back end is the correct way to go about doing it.
Having said all that, you got a mechanical device at 80+ feet in the air, and is that sound going to carry without anything being in the way to block it other than a wall? So if it was left there exposed, even if it was a quiet device, and with the trees, I'm going to assume they're not over 90, 80 feet in that area to block any
There
of-
would be no tree that tall. But yeah,
I'm sorry?
I understand where you, I believe, let me check for understanding. So-
Is there anything gonna be in the way to block it other than the wall, the noise? So is it just the wall gonna be blocking that noise?
Right, so for example, on top of the ASRS, the automated
Right.
storage retrieval system, right, there would not be something that tall, probably. Even though, I say, hey, let's make sure we get the correct units designed and those types of things. I'm not a sound engineer, right? That's why we have Mr. Brooks as the PE to say, okay, we have these devices, right, which they're rated as being good in reference to sound. Well, that's interesting. Let's have Mr. Brooks analyze the system, because it's not just one unit, right? There's 3 units up there, right? So what is that total sound from those 3 units? That's why we have Mr. Brooks to figure those things out for us and tell us if we need any further mitigation.
So that sounds like those kinds of calculations would be coming after we've given you a blessing?
Yeah, my understanding is that the actual equipment design specifications and selection has not yet occurred and will come later in this project, given the nature of the project. So that's where Mr. Brooks will be working with them.
That's correct, and thanks, Sil, for that description. That was apt. But, the plant is still undergoing its design and engineering, and so we're in this process, and we have at least a couple dozen pieces of equipment that we're addressing here, not just 1 or 2. So some of them are lower level and won't need anything, or may need a little bit of sound attenuation, and other ones are the standouts, which we know from the get-go that we're going to have to put a robust, substantial enclosure on. So that's kind of how it works. And then each piece of equipment is an individual. It all goes into the model, and we may have 20 or 30 pieces of equipment in the model. Everything adds up at the property line. And then we have to go through an iteration process where we prioritize each piece. So the higher level pieces say, okay, this one needs to be knocked down more. What are we going to do here? We're going to thicken the walls of the enclosure, or we're going to move it to another location, or whatever the plan is. So it's an iterative process, and it will be going on throughout this time period. Before anything gets installed, we want to have a very good handle on where we're going. So as Sil mentioned, we don't have to go back and fix it later.
Well, I bring this up and because I just had a recent experience. My daughter lives across the street from me, about 250, 300 feet. And I'm standing at the garage looking down, and I hear my daughter talking to her daughter like she was standing in front of me at 250 feet, and that's with a row of conifer trees in front of me that are probably 15 to 20 feet tall. So I just get amazed how sound carries. I mean, this is a child's voice talking to her mother and not yelling or screaming, but it was like, I could hear everything they're saying. So, you get a mechanical device on a roof up there, and what's to stop it? It's definitely a significant thing to somebody if it does carry, a whining or something like that. So, go ahead, Jim.
Well, that's a good point. Sound does carry in certain situations, but part of our design is to select the equipment that won't, if we can avoid any whiny sounds or something that could be annoying, and certainly make it low level so that it's consistent with all of the regulations. Now, I might want to say, with regard to the regulations, the 51 decibel level, or 51 weighted decibels, or dBA at night, was designed by the state of Connecticut, again, the sound of a very quiet voice. And I don't know if it may be quiet, maybe quieter than your granddaughter's, but it's the sound of a quiet voice, and the state of Connecticut decided that is a very, very low limit to impose. So that's the limit that the state of Connecticut decided would be protective of residences. So,
Hey,
that's our
Bennett,
goal.
one question for you.
And that's what we want to meet.
Bennett, this is Roger Giesick for the record from Frito-Lay. When you did your latest survey last week, when you had both of the starch blowers off, can you just confirm what the measurement was at the property line? I believe it was around 48 decibels with both of the starch blowers off.
Yes, with both of them off, it was in the neighborhood of about 48.
Okay, so that would give the commission some level of confidence. That would be with the entire plant running, full production with all the rooftop equipment running. So that is significantly below and, wouldn't yield any complaints from the lake residents. That would be with the ventilation equipment running on both the existing high-rise and the new GES high-rise that was put in 2014. So just to give you some sort of comfort that, the equipment in its current location is pretty quiet as measured at the property line. And the specific complaints that we got from the lake residents were with the starch drying blowers, the starch drying system blowers, and that's what we were trying to highlight with the report. We have gotten some initial indications that it is very quiet since we made these modifications. Now, there hasn't been a lot of time, but if you'd like to solicit some of the lake residents, I think you'll find out that there's a significant difference, and they're starting to hear some of the other industry on the other side of the lake more so than Frito-Lay. So I think it's positive, but that might give you some level of comfort just where we are, if that helps.
Good, John?
Is it my understanding that the warehousing that you have on site, you control the climate? You have air conditioning, you have humidity that you're monitoring, is that correct?
So our entire facility, through our resource conservations, we're on what we call a building management system. So it started with the systems that we put in with GES back in 2014, and now we have that throughout the facility. So, for example, we have enthalpy control that measures the amount of energy in the atmosphere to determine whether how much recirc versus fresh air comes into the plant. We also run the plant similar to for example, in some areas where residential-wise would be considered like a whole house fan, right? So, for example, when it gets cooler at night, let's do some air changes, those types of things. A pretty complex system, but great from energy conservation, of course. Like I say, right, the less thing you're moving, right, the less energy you're using. It also equates over to less noise and those things. So it's a very efficient system.
That's not really what I'm getting at. Is it necessary for your product to maintain the atmospheric conditions within your warehousing?
We are a food processing facility, so we do work quite a bit with air balance throughout the facility. Meaning, for example, a higher pressure in the open food processing areas versus the warehouse areas. So the air would move to the outside or away from the actual processing areas, right? And some areas, for example, it needs to be cooler. For example, where we have a lot of automation, like in our packaging room, right, or motor control centers, things like that. Those have to be more temperature controlled.
Yeah, I'm telling you why I'm
In
answering
reference,
this question.
for the ASRS? In reference to the ASRS, we do have to maintain enough heat so that it doesn't freeze in there, right? But we don't cool it. We don't use a lot of energy where we don't need to. So it's primarily an air circulation type unit that's in the ASRS.
There's a reason I'm asking this.
Okay.
At the last meeting, there was an accusation made that you're going to be using your additional trailer parking area for storage. Are you using trailers for storage on site?
So we do put product in the trailers, right? To give you an idea, we typically keep about 2.4 days of product on hand in our warehouse. You can imagine what that volume means, right? So as we rotate that volume through to keep that velocity up, it's really just-in-time manufacturing, very complex process. So as we make it, right? We have to put it out there in the trailer, right? It may sit for a day before a tractor comes and picks it up and moves it, right? So all depends upon the supply chain and what we're doing with the product. So for example, if I'm going to do a direct load that I want to ship directly to, for example, a Frito-Lay warehouse, I might go straight from my production line straight to that trailer, right, with just the one person touching those cases as it goes into the trailer, automated the whole way. If we have a mixed product produced trailer or something like that, there are different things we have to do with our product to become more efficient during this process of supply chain. So it's not a storage area, right? But it's not like we load a trailer and then it disappears off the lot that same exact day. We have to optimize our trailer filling time in reference to our route schedule, whether we're delivering direct to store or whether we're delivering to the Frito-Lay distribution system.
So you're not using trailers for storage on site? Load a trailer, leaving it there for a week, 2 weeks?
We could be, for example, cartons, cardboard, right? We do recycle our cartons, so the cartons that go out to the stores, right, they get put in some trailers and they'll come back. So there could be some trailers in the process that sit out there. We prefer not to leave product out in the yard very long.
So let me just piggyback on that,
Sure.
So in looking at this photograph from above, where I guess they're not trucks, they're just the trailers, lots and lots and lots of them. What kind of percentage are they just sitting there empty? And if that's the case, why?
So it depends upon our distribution cycle. Think of our production capacity is like a flat line, a maximum production capacity. If demand goes above that production curve, right, we have to store a little more product on site, right? It slows down our distribution channels, right? And then as our demand goes below our production capacity, we can move product really fast. So there is a fluctuation, right, that we have to maintain to ensure our customers get the supply chain need that they have.
I mean, I'm asking this question not necessarily from a planning and zoning point of view, but so it's an astonishing number of trailers. And I'm just wondering, really, all of those are?
We produce, yes. Okay, so on ourselves, we produce over 160 million pounds of product a year. That's a lot of potato chips when you sell them by the ounce in little bags. All right, so that's one thing that we do. We also are what's called a full mix warehouse, where we bring in a percentage of product that we don't make. So, for example, because we do direct delivery through our GES operation that was put in operation back in 2014 to stores, right? So right now, for example, we don't make baked Cheetos and crunchy Cheetos, right? Those will come from our Aberdeen plant, right? So that's what we call non-produced product. For example, Grandma's cookies, they're a Frito-Lay product, but that's a non-produced product. So we bring those products into our plant, mix, and then distribute out to other parts of the Frito-Lay distribution system and stores.
Okay, thank you.
Just one more question. How many loads a day do you ship out of there on average?
I don't know that number offhand.
Is it 100, 200?
Like more than that.
More than that. And how many trailer slots do you have on site with the new addition?
Is our
It's in there
traffic guy still
somewhere, I
on?
noticed.
Yeah, he's still on there.
Yeah.
Okay. We got any other questions?
I'm not the best with all the numbers. I maintain all the equipment and keep it going, and I work the projects through the process, but I'm not
That
familiar
was
on a
one of the
daily
questions,
basis.
all right?
Yeah.
Or accusations, put it that way.
Yeah, it's a very high-velocity business, is a
So
good way to describe it.
I'll go get back to sound questions. Mr. Brooks, if you're still on, when you do your modeling, will you be validating your model baseline based on your testing you did already in the field?
Yeah, we try to validate the model all through the process. So, for example, just as we did with the starch system, the starch system was installed, and we were fortunate we had the opportunity to test it the same day, and found out that the design worked as it was supposed to, and it was a success. So that's the type of process. When you build something as complex as a production plant. You know, you have to take it a step at a time, and so that's the way we intend to make everything work.
Yeah, so I appreciate that, and I just want to make sure, because again, you have real-time measurements now, and you're kind of marginal exactly on that 51 dBA line, right? So I'm just curious if you're going to validate your model, your baseline model, without any new equipment with your current results that you have, is the first question. And the second question, I guess, would be
Yes,
the Frito-Lay.
the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. And would be the Frito-Lay. Are you going to basically proof with testing at the end of construction to validate the model results? And have that report submitted to us, to the towns?
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Mr. Brooks, anything else that we need to, anything new?
Well, okay, if there's nothing else, well, thank you to the commission and to Frito-Lay. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's go to our next. Next is Greg Howell of Frito-Lay. Greg is involved. He's a supply chain senior principal engineer in the warehouse automation area. He's going to talk with you about how the warehouse ASRS functions, why the requested height is necessary for the efficient operations of the facility, and he'll also cover for you if the fact that if you were to try to stay, under 50 feet, for example, it would require a significantly larger footprint and conflict with other things that are out at the site, like parking lots, entrances, and require the plant to move farther out. So with that, I think Greg actually, maybe we'll go to the next. Would you like us to go to the next slide, Greg, as you start?
Sure, that's fine. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, and would you also mind, Greg, just giving a quick description to the commission of, what your role is with the warehouse and ASRS?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time. As Joe stated, my name is Greg Hall. I'm a senior principal engineer for Frito-Lay's Supply Chain and Transformation Engineering Department, and I lead our warehouse automation group. To provide some background on my experience over the past 15 plus years, I've been in a variety of roles working projects with automation, with the last 5+ years of that within the warehouse. As Joe mentioned, I'm going to speak about the proposed automated storage and retrieval system, the ASRS, as we refer to it. In my experience, I have overseen the design, install, and startup of at least 8 ASRS at multiple different Frito-Lay facilities across the country, similar to the one being proposed. With that stated, I'd like to move to talk about the proposed ASRS for the Killingly Frito-Lay site and provide some additional information regarding the special height permit for the 86-foot, 8-inch height of the proposed ASRS design. So the ASRS that's planned for the Killing facility was designed with the optimal height to maximize storage capacity and operational efficiency while minimizing the overall building footprint. The highly automated vertical and horizontal integration is a proven design for Frito-Lay. The proposed ASRS is a 54-bay, double-deep, 3-aisle ASRS. It's intended to store 5,184 pallets of finished goods product. Frito-Lay has 12 of these 8-tier ASRS systems throughout the country, and this is the standard design for our new installations due to the efficiency of the design. In designing the Killingly site ASRS, careful consideration was given to the size, design, and location of the warehouse expansion, given the incremental storage requirements to support the new manufacturing lines, existing structures, and the parking constraints at the Killingly site. The proposed ASRS has a condensed footprint of 24,600 square feet. A reduction in height below 50 feet tall would require a 93,300 square feet of conventional warehouse, which is almost 4 times the proposed design. Use of a conventional warehouse versus an automated warehouse would substantially decrease the operational efficiency of this new expansion. By stating that, what I mean is the conventional warehouse would require additional employees as the shorter height makes automation less efficient. which would mean more employees at shift changes and a need for a larger employee parking area, as well as the increased warehouse storage square footage. In addition, the Killenly site is extremely space constrained, especially in the area where the warehouse expansion needs to be located. And so due to these constraints, a conventional warehouse is just not feasible. Designing the new ASRS to align with the height of the existing ASRS high-rise encompasses a similar constraint, whereas the height reduction actually reduces the number of pallet areas required to the point where we need to add another aisle of ASRS, which would grow the footprint of the building west, making the footprint larger and extending the building closer towards Maple Street and potentially impacting the site entrance. Since the previous ASRS was installed, we've partnered with our suppliers to optimize the operational and space efficiency of these ASRS systems. And the 8-tier system that we're proposing is now the standard for all new Frito-Lay installations. Given these considerations, we believe the design as presented is the most desirable and has the least impact to the surrounding community. And in addition, the proposed design maximizes the operational efficiency. So just to kind of go through the pictures here, these two on this first slide are from a similar 8-tier system that we just recently installed and started up in our Dallas service center. And so on the left, you can see the racking going up to 8 tiers. This is kind of what a peek of the inside of the building looks like before we start storing pallets in there. And then on the right, you can see the fully enclosed high-rise building with the rooftop units. And if we go to the next slide, you can actually see what this looks like on the inside. The yellow mass, those are the actual storage retrieval machines that travel up and down the aisle and put pallets from conveyor into the racking for storage and pull them from the racking to put onto conveyor to be sent out to a fork truck. What questions do you have?
I mean, yeah, so just curious, if there was even any height reduction, I'm not saying to a traditional 50-foot high facility, but something that was shorter than what is proposed at the, what is it, 86 foot, 8 inches?
8 inches. Yep.
How would even reducing this by 10 feet, because we're thinking that we're going to potentially have some sort of acoustic screening potentially that goes along the top of the building to at least limit the overall height of this? Like, how does that, minimal of a height reduction impact the overall footprint? Because I think that it's a drastic ask to go from 86 to 50 potentially and your efficiency, but to drop it 10 feet potentially and add the width of another bay, I don't know. That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, so great question. So as I kind of stated, I'll go a little deeper into that one. So we have a group of analysts that utilize all the historical data from our sites to develop key design inputs for these projects to ensure optimal performance of our sites. One of those key design inputs is the number of pallet storage spaces required. And so this group determined for this project that there was a need for 4,993 pallet areas. So as I stated before, we needed 5,100, or the system that's proposed provides 5,184 pallet areas. If we took away 1 tier of that, that is 648 pallet areas that would get removed. And so because of that, it's another aisle of space that would need to be put in, which is another 27-foot wide aisle that would go closer west towards Maple Street to accommodate that.
Can I just add one thing, Joseph Hammer, for the applicant? I understand your question and appreciate it, but I guess I just wanted to point out, the commission has previously approved 77 for a portion of the existing ASRS, which is out there. So it's a 9-foot difference on an overall basis to what's there today.
So if they were to eliminate the 9 feet, you'd have to go 27 feet out with that section of the building, the ASRS. Is that right?
That's correct.
And when did the standard change from the previous ASRS that was building height that was before us to the new standard?
I believe it was around 2016 is when we did, and so I believe the Killenly install was, Sil and Roger might know that better than I do. I think it was
Ours was 2014.
Yeah, 2014. That sounds right.
So these walls on this ASRS building is going to be just solid, plain, blank walls? Is that correct?
Yeah, with lighting, I believe. But yes, they're usually just IMP walls.
How many people would be in in these buildings?
In the high rise itself,
Well, I'm looking at this plan.
there should be none. There might be one or two for maintenance purposes, but the whole idea behind it is that it's mostly a dark space.
So
Where-
if you're
where people
comparing,
don't work regularly.
well, let me jump back. If you're thinking of
Sure.
our existing ASRS that we have for the GES operation, that ASRS has what we call pick belts inside of it, where we have pallets slide in, they break it down and put cases on individual belts to go out to feed our GES distribution system. This ASRS here does not have pick belts. It's a straight storage piece with 3 cranes.
I'm
That's
looking
correct. Thanks.
at the drawing here.
Okay, so you might be referring to the big square block on the end. That's called the low bay. That would have the docks going to the north side of the plant, and there would be people in there with fork trucks taking pallets, putting in trailers.
So that's just an addition, but not part of the ASRS, or is that where the ASRS is going to be shipping its stock to?
That building, I believe, is approximately a 40-foot height. So we call that the low bay, and that part of the facility's height is 40 feet.
Right, so for personnel within the building.
Yes, there'll be people in that 40-foot section.
So the assumption is that all the stock that's in the big building gets put into trucks from that's a transition area?
Yes, we'll have new docks on the north end of the plant.
You kind of beat around the answer here, you don't really,
I don't.
like somebody running for office.
Sorry about that. I'm not sure what you're asking. I'm trying to think for the. So what we were referring to specifically is right now we were discussing primarily. I was thinking as the height for the special permit of the ASRS, not specifically the low bay portion and the general description of the warehouse section of the Phase 2 expansion.
Well, it's all part of the site plan review too, is personnel within the building and the footprint of what the building should actually have. Interior layout designs.
Yes.
According to the plans.
Yes, we do have that, and that comes later. Where do you have that coming? When?
I don't know if it's in the PowerPoint, but I know that they have been submitted.
It's in this part in here.
Haskell is going
Right, when
to
we get
speak
into-
next. I don't know if they have a picture of that or not. I don't think
Thought
so.
that was one of the questions.
Wait a minute. Yes, that will
Yeah,
be.
and then there's the internal.
No.
Oh, what happened to our internal stuff?
I know it was submitted to the zoning office,
Okay.
I believe, but.
Yeah, the internal drawings were submitted to you all in reference to the question from the last planning and zoning. And inside you'll see the equipment layout in what we call the low bay area in the submitted drawings that we gave you. And for the manufacturing area, it's proprietary equipment, so we just have designated in there the packaging areas and the processing areas.
Right. I mean, the regulations require architectural showing. That's why I asked about what the outside facade was going to look like as well, because it's part of the requirement is to have architecturals to show what the building looks like.
Thank you.
You've got, I see 2 accesses for steps, it looks like, by the truck park area.
That's correct.
Now, there's a square over here on the western side of the building, I can only assume that is that an access? Is that like an emergency exit door?
On the west side of the facility,
Yes.
that would be an emergency exit.
281.74 elevation, well, it's actually inside it says 283. So is that a concrete walkway?
Okay, we're checking to get one of our engineers to put up a drawing for you. Yes, so that's the western wall there. There's fire exits on that wall.
Okay, so it's like a concrete walkway, and then that's just an emergency exit?
So the emergency exit for life safety.
Okay, so employees, anybody personnel that work in here, they travel through the parking lot to get to that section of the building?
Nope,
I
on
don't
the,
see
with
any
that
other
dotted,
doors.
where that dot, see where the ASRS is, where it's in the dotted line? Okay, there's a corridor just to the east side of it, at the bottom of the page.
Right here?
I'm gonna jump up.
That's fine.
So, this is the existing low bay off the old.
So this is an existing building?
Yep. This is the existing low bay on this side here from the 1914 facility. This part is the ASRS for the 2014 facility.
Okay.
This area in here is a corridor. On the upper level, we'll have an automated system that transfers pallets back and forth. On the lower level.
Between these two?
No, between this side over here.
Okay.
Because this ASRS block, there's another one sitting right here. It only has an entrance and exit coming this way. This has the entrance and exit coming this way. So we have an automated pallet section that comes over here on a second level, and on the bottom level is for foot traffic.
So exit and entrance to this area is this way.
Correct. The employees would walk in this way.
And then any emergency, or obviously truck drivers here, I guess, and then this would be the only other emergency exit.
Correct.
Okay. Just want clarification.
And Mr. Chairman, the next speakers from Haskell will be able to address that for you as well.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Holt?
I need a break.
Okay, we have to, if we continue past 10, we also have to vote on that. Let's,
Go.
we got a 5-minute break.
Okay.
We also have another hearing tonight, too, so.
We're close to completion. We just have a couple people from Haskell who want to run through a couple of the slides to conclude tonight.
Okay. Sorry,
Dave's gonna go ahead and introduce the and for the floor plan, that's what can point to, they're not in this.
Okay, back to order.
Yeah, I told him when he gets to his part.
Mr. Hammer, we got
Yes.
next?
Okay, next is going to be, the next three are all going to be on the screen. We're going to go first to Dave Cody, and these remaining slides deal primarily with the changes to the parking lot expansion relocation and to some lighting modifications. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave Cody to get us going. And introduce.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, the Haskell design team will be presenting here. Stephen Cole will be doing civil engineering. I'll be doing the architectural, and we'll also have lighting design to close up these exhibits. Starting with this civil engineering stuff, thank you for sharing for the team there. Stephen Cole, if you would go ahead and start with this overall site plan slide. Next slide, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Stephen Cole, civil project engineer. To begin with, can everybody hear me okay? I think we had issues last time, so.
Yes.
No, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So once again, Stephen Cole, civil engineer. I've been involved with this project from the Yellen Lot expansion, phase 1 and now phase 2. And I've had the pleasure to speak with ladies and gentlemen of the board on several occasions. So this first slide, my main point is going to be to discuss some of the changes that were made, as Dave Cody said, from the previous application, previous hearing. I'm going to kind of skip over the building expansions and talk more about the site changes, but I'll start with general layout. Once again, north is to the right side of the page. Upper Maple Street is on the upper side of the page. New manufacturing expansion on the southwest corner. The ASRS and new warehouse expansion is on the north east corner of the existing facility. So getting into some of the key changes, obviously you'll see on this sheet the auto parking expansion, which was previously moving straight west from the existing lot. We've rotated that down to tuck it in more with the site geometry and to maintain some buffer space. And I'll next two slides, I'm going to get into a little further detail specific to the auto parking lot. You'll also notice that the existing gravel road is to remain undisturbed, except for a small section of asphalt pavement at the southern end. And this will lead into trailer parking expansion that is now going to be on the west side of that road. Previously, the trailer expansion had 30 stalls. That was actually on the same plane as the existing lot, which ultimately took away access along that gravel road. So by dropping it down in the same plane, same grade as that gravel road, that thoroughfare is supposed to or will remain open. We've also added the adjoining property owners, and that's also shown on the civil engineering documents that was submitted to the board. Next slide, please. So honing more in on the auto parking lot. On the left side, we show a couple of photos. These were recently taken by members of our field team to show some of the vegetation there and get a better understanding for what's there existing. This new lot, so the closest point of this auto parking lot is 291 feet from the right-of-way. The existing auto parking lot is 266 feet from the Upper Maple Street right-of-way. So we are not encroaching any further with this geometric layout. So the parking stalls the count remains the same as what was previously presented on. We are adding an additional 172, but this total lot is 268 due to some removal of existing stalls from building footprint. A member of the public commented on some of the parking counts and why there were this number of parking count. So this value comes from Frito-Lay and peak shift overlap. So the largest shift overlap that was analyzed and provided by Frito-Lay based on this expansion was 726 employees. So that's 2 shifts. Based on some historical data provided by Frito-Lay, previous projects, there's around a 13% reduction that we take into account, and that's for sick time, vacation, carpooling, people not showing up to work, etc. So that brings that total to, once again, the final condition of 633 spaces needed for the facility. Moving on to the next slide, please. Okay, so grading and drainage. It'll be kind of difficult to see the contours on here, but the goal of this was to essentially recess this parking lot. It's higher than the existing, but there's going to be a 4-foot berm all the way around the western edge of the property and into the western edge of the auto parking lot and into the northwest corner of the auto parking lot. So as you're looking up from Upper Maple Street, you will see that green space, the buffer in between Upper Maple Street and the berm, and no vehicles will be visible because of that berm. So once again, the entire area west of that will remain undisturbed. That includes the gravel roadway. Also, as part of this plan, we're proposing coniferous trees to be planted on top of that 4-foot berm, which you can see by the green circles there, and that's to fill in any gaps from the existing vegetation. Also, it's the green hatched area. That's the 5,360 square feet of required green space per the zoning code. We're providing 5,725 square feet of green space, and that will be planted shrubs along the embankment on the perimeter of the auto parking lot. So once again, we are proposing an underground detention system as previously described. The location of that is shown by the gray rectangle, and that will be within underneath the existing auto parking lot. No changes to runoff discharge or location. Next slide, please. So we got public comment about request for an internal site traffic circulation plan. There's a couple of different color-coded items on here. I'm not going to get into the details specifically there. The key takeaway, though, is that we'll have no improvements to either entrance road and no major changes to on-site circulation from what's previously occurring out there. The entire site has two-way through traffic, and I'll get into in each access point. If there is a gate, does have a Knox box for emergency access. There's one at the auto lot entrance where the drop arms lie. And then for the most part, the truck entrance, which is the red line at the far right of the page, that remains open at all times. And if closed, there is access for emergency access as well. So short and sweet. If there's any questions, civil, I know we were getting into lighting and some other views from Upper Maple Street. And if there's any questions from the civil site side, feel free to ask.
Quick question, how are you addressing drainage at the trailer parking area since that's now recessed?
So the trailer parking lot, that would be part of the master planned drainage area that goes to the Yellen infiltration basin. So previously, that upper lot, we did account for added impervious area, which is shown on the drainage maps, which were provided to the board members in planning and zoning, as well as the hydrology report. But ultimately, that western, those trailer stalls would all drain into the Yellen lot under stormwater collection system, and be accounted for within the infiltration pond. And all water quality treatment would be, it's already been provided as part of the master plan.
I thought you said the grade dropped over there.
From what we were previously proposing. So if you look in relation to the Yellen lot, the far left side of the page, what we're calling Yellen lot or south lot, that lot is lower than those trailer stalls. So grade falls from north to south.
Okay, we just don't have a plan that shows the grading or drainage over there.
And Commissioner Card, if I might just add, we wanted to get these plans in front of you tonight to show the movement, but we are going to be working as quickly as possible on more detailed engineering to be able to show the stormwater
Okay, 'cause
drainage
he
before
showed
the.
drainage on the auto lot, but not that one. That was just confusing.
Yeah, so
Okay.
before the next meeting, he'll show you how it's gonna connect into the existing systems and that the numbers work and so
Okay.
forth.
Is there gonna be any
That's
additional
correct.
buffer of vegetation since you're moving that much closer to the right of way of Maple Street? I mean, that parking lot's moving much closer to Maple Street from the original proposal.
Correct. So we still have that required buffer distance from the right-of-way. And we can show plantings there. We'll need to work through exactly what that looks like. And we'll provide those plans to you.
Okay, thank you.
I've never heard anything up about the forest management plan that was part of the special permit of 2010, or?
Yeah, I can, so basically, you know, Frito-Lay has looked in its records, and going back to the 2009 timeframe, they have not been able to determine all the back and forth that may have occurred with your staff, or whether or not a final plan was arrived at that time. But we believe we met the intent of the 10-year-old approval by maintaining with the revised parking lot location that forested area, which now 10 years later is quite mature. There's trees in there that are 30, 35 feet tall. And I think we heard a lot of comments at the last meeting by people about how it is an effective buffer and screen that they wanted to see remain, and now it will.
Well, wasn't there a railway expansion in that same area between now and then that also eliminated tree buffering?
Roger or Sil, you got to go up to the microphone and identify yourself, thanks.
Okay, so the railroad expansion that was put in, we put a small spur in that went over to where we used to have some propane tanks in that area, so there was very little vegetation in that area before the railroad was put in. It's probably easier if I point to it. All right, so if you look at the railroad tracks, when you come into the site, you see the two where they bend. All right, you see the top piece that comes out to the end of it, where you see the railroad stop on it. Okay, that piece there was all the backup propane for the site that we used to have, that whole area. So we used to have some trailers over there and other stuff in that area as well. So minimal changes were done up in that area.
Well, there was a lot of trees moved. I know if you drive down Maple Street down there, there's a big hole there that pretty much shows everything up in the building and the parking lot, especially where I believe it's where the potatoes are.
Potato unload area. So
I believe, I can't swear to it.
that's in that general area, to your point.
Right, and that's the part that was supposed to have a forest management plan, part of that 2010 approval. And so,
Yeah,
Can
I'm just a
we,
little concerned with the buffering along there. Special permits should be required, to maintain the buffers.
can we take a look at that, Mr. Chairman, and see if there's the ability to try to, do some landscaping in that area, if that would be
Well, it
something?
also leads to the new parking lot and the buffering that's going on, being proposed there. It looks like it's hard to see here what's actually being done and how it looks like in the field. But obviously, there's a big concern with buffering with Maple Street and the residents across the street there. They're a very vocal bunch. Um, I find it interesting that with Frito-Lay so close to the road and along all the cottages, but yet when the industrial park put their buildings up, United Natural Foods and used to be Symbol Mattress and all those, they required a berm to be built, a manufactured berm to be built. And yet, and here, over the years, you've got trees that are diminishing and the buffers being more and more exposed.
Sorry, Roger, did you want to say something?
What we've done with the parking lot relocation was we've maintained that berm, that natural berm that exists between both Maple Street and the main spur and the spur and our employee parking lot. We had Anne Marie and Jonathan out to kind of walk the property in the last couple of weeks so they could see that. There's almost a 15-foot change in elevation between our employee lot and this berm going down to Maple Street. So you really can't even see the employee lot. It's the berm that blocks most of it. You've got trees and both pines and regular deciduous trees in that area, but that's been the request from the lake community. Joe has worked with Mary Miller, the Lake Association attorney, in trying to maintain that area, and that's why we went through the extent of moving that parking lot. It really was to maintain that buffer, barrier, berm, whatever you want to call it, in its natural state. And you'll see that everything by the employee lot was maintained. There's no disruptions if you go from the employee lot to Maple Street. And that was really the intent of all the work that we've done in the last couple of weeks.
So how does that affect the tall 86-foot building when you're at Maple Street looking up?
Well, you have a couple views that Stephen Cole referred to, and we can go back to. I think they're in your plan. We took some recent pictures that show, even without the leaves being kind of a winter condition, it's very hard to see that. Okay. Then they'll be coming up. You can.
And how about as well as the trailer park, that proposed trailer park?
So that trailer park is very similar to what you see in the south lot. It's about the same location. And if you notice where we have the residence listed at the top of that, we're not really opposite any residence. That's more towards that open area by the Lake Tavern. And I think there's a Christmas tree farm across the street that does some blocking and buffering that's not on our property, but provides a little bit of a visual barrier in that area. But that's certainly something that we could take a look at. We were just trying to trade off the issue of blocking the gravel road. That was the Anthony Simpson issue. So in order to do that, we relocated the trailer parking. We actually gave up some number of spots in order to do that. We kept it at the same grade and about the same relative location as the south lot.
Well, just recalling at the last meeting, the auto parking, you were talking about not going into that part because it was going to eliminate some buffering by doing that. So,
Well,
I mean, if it's buffered, it's buffered, but it is,
Yeah, I mean,
the limited amount of tree line I see here, and then the opening, you see where the spurs go in and out, and then you've got, I mean, I'd have to see from the Maple Street what the view would look like with the additional parking, if it's gonna eliminate any buffering in that area as well.
So the plan that we submitted last time actually had the employee parking lot going within 50 feet of our spur, right? So it was significantly beyond and involved, Brian, almost an 8 to 10 foot cut on that berm in places. So that's where we've maintained not only the berm, but the trees that are in there. I mean, I would encourage you maybe to take a ride down Maple Street now that the leaves are gone and make some observations. We've tried to do that in some pictures, which you'll see coming up in just a few moments. But it's a pretty effective barrier. Obviously, during the summer when we got a lot more residents outside, the leaves provide even more protection. But it's surprisingly how little you can see of the plant right now with no leaves on the trees.
Well, actually,
Anne Marie, if you
that's
back up 2 slides, there's a good visual with a background aerial we can help describe.
Actually, that's the reason I brought it up, is because I just drove down Maple Street and happened to look over and saw how bare it was, because there were all deciduous trees through there, so the leaves were gone, and I had quite a view of the buildings in there, which I believe was and I'm guessing, the potato loading area, but I'm not 100%, like I said before.
Well,
But there's a pretty wide open gap in there where you can see quite clearly the industrial side of what's going on from Maple Street. Now,
And-
this is to the south, obviously. It's not up by the berm where you're planning on the parking lot. If that's all hid, that's well and good.
Yep.
As long as we maintain a tree buffering there.
Yeah, we can certainly look at the,
But that whole lower section to me was wide open and, as part of special permits, it requires good buffering and trying to protect the neighborhood.
right, and
from
the special,
industrial.
and the special permit is for the ASRS, which is on the northern part of the property,
Okay,
right?
so the site plan review, you got a proposed building, that parking lot down there, which also influences that.
Yep.
You-
I mean, we can certainly look at it. Some of the challenges is, we've got the railroad property, and then we've got some lake-owned property that's between Maple Street and the site, right? If we could reach an agreement where we could plant trees on, lake-owned property to have more of a buffer, we could certainly
Well,
have
that's
those
between you
discussions.
and them, I
Right.
guess, but
I mean,
I'm just trying to meet up with the buffering, and
right.
I'd like to see the forest management plan that we had approved years ago, quite frankly, but I don't know how that plays out in this application, but it just seems like if you promise to do something, you should do it, that's all.
The map that you gave me said that there was an area that they were willing to deal, I don't want to say preserve, but maintain as a buffer, and that was from that gravel driveway up to the railroad track. That map did not go as far down as the tractor-trailer area went. And if you look at the very front of this, the tractor-trailer is near that open area. That's not their land. I was just telling the other Attorney Slater that. So I don't know, if you can show me where you were when you were looking at this, that would help me greatly, because then I would be able to. No, because when we went out to the site last week, they're maintaining the buffer between the gravel driveway and the railroad, which is what everybody wanted them to maintain. And that, when I looked at the plans that you had given me, and I had looked at them at the town clerk's office, the area that was supposed to be the buffer was exactly that area. I did not see anything on the maps, I will double check, that goes down farther towards where their trailer is.
Interesting.
Keith? Yeah, Keith, I have one question. Where is the right-of-way on this property, on the south side?
When you talk about the right-of-way.
Are
So.
you talking about the Upper Maple Street right away?
Yeah,
Yes, sir. So if you notice the two dashed lines that run page right to left, so the middle of that is the rail line right of way. So the western or the page north line is the Upper Maple Street right of way.
no, I'm talking the right-of-way that a adjoining property owner has.
Oh, the easement?
Can I,
Oh,
The Prim's former property.
Yes, sir. Okay, so Anthony's, what he is saying, he's saying
Yeah.
that this is the right-of-way right here.
Yeah,
And what we did is by moving the proposed parking lot was first over here
yeah,
to over here. So
Yeah.
that opens the dirt road, keeps the dirt road going this way. And then also, this parking lot here was originally designed to be at the same level as this parking lot up here,
yeah,
which again would eliminate that dirt road. So by moving this parking over here, and by moving this over here, it does maintain this dirt road coming all the way down through.
and where does he go from this point on?
He goes right through here, and there's a gate.
And then
there's a-
down?
Yep, and there's a gate, may I borrow your pen?
Yeah,
There's a gate right here,
yeah,
and there's also a gate down here, because that's for the power company.
okay. Thanks.
I guess, Attorney Hammer, if I could ask, at the next session of the public hearing, if you could be able to explain exactly what was just explained to the one commissioner, because certainly members of the public
Yes.
and other members around the table could certainly, I'm sorry, couldn't see that. So that was the main concern.
With the visual
was to
and-
answer the commissioner's
And-
question.
and-
But
And could I just add, a right-of-way or access right has been asserted by Mr. Simpson. We don't believe he's established that, and I talked last time about how that's not the role of the commission. But if we put that entirely to the side, with this revised plan, we think it really makes academic for right now that question, because as they showed you, there's no physical
And that's what
blocking.
he just illustrated.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Okay.
Do I need to explain it on the picture so other folks listening into the call can hear it?
Yeah.
Okay,
The
so,
previous slide, Anne Marie, shows the whole site, and still might be better to describe that. Yep.
hey, Steve, if you could show the right-of-way instead of me, that way you can drag your cursor across the screen and you could explain it. It'd probably be better for the...
This is what's being worked.
Oh, okay. All right, so the right-of-way access that goes...
She's saying that somebody could go in there and,
Okay, so the right-of-way access is the...
Hold on one second. I think they're going to be able to control the mouse, and you'll be able to describe from what you see on the mouse. I might be wrong, but if they can do that, then you can explain it as the mouse moves.
Yeah, so if you go up to the auto lot entrance, yep, and if you follow those two lines all the way down to the south lot.
Where's the cursor?
That's it.
We're not watching the... We don't see the cursor
I
yet.
don't see
It's
it.
because just a PowerPoint slide. They probably can't use the cursor over the top of it.
Oh, I see Anne Marie moving it.
Can't see it.
John, I really,
I have no control over what's up on the screen tonight.
really,
For those
All
of you
right,
on
let
WebEx.
me try to talk it through a little bit here. So when we go
I know.
to
Somebody's gonna be in
right
there
below where the wording
next
says
month.
Upper Maple Street...
Same thing.
I know.
Can we have it
and-
quiet in the audience, please? Thank you.
Okay, so the disputed right-of-way starts right off the employee entrance. So when you see the words where it says Upper Maple Street, right below where it says street, you cross over the dark gray line, which is Maple Street, and then you'll see that's where the employee entrance is. It's the double dotted line, if you will, that's just just at the top of the page or west of the proposed employee parking lot that goes down past the existing employee lot down towards what we call the south lot, where we were just discussing about where that blue rectangle is, which is proposed trailer parking. Originally, the employee parking lot was to the west of our existing employee parking lot, which would have displaced that dirt road. In addition, the trailer parking that's down to the south, that blue rectangle there, that was originally at the elevation of the adjacent parking lots, which you can see just to the east or bottom of that. So if we did it at that same elevation, that would also eliminate the dirt road in that section. So what we did is we reduced the trailer parking and kept it basically at the elevation of the dirt road, which is slightly higher than the elevation of the south lot. And we also moved or proposed to move the employee parking as seen. Putting those two moves together maintains that dirt road going down through to the south of our property.
Okay, if there's no more questions on that, I think we're going to move on to lighting. Okay. Am I right?
Yes, correct.
Am I right, Dave? Okay.
That is correct. Any more questions on there, we can move on.
If we could, I think we need to advance a couple slides here to
Slides.
catch up.
Yes, Yvonnia, if you would pick up.
These hash marks here are contours, I'm assuming. There's no elevations there. Can you explain what that is for me?
Repeat the question, we could not hear that.
So the question was about the gore striped area going from the side of the ASRS to the low bay.
Could you advance the two slides, and I think we'll be looking at what the chairman is looking at. Thank you. I think that's it.
Okay, what he's
No.
looking at, what his question was about was the corner area from where the ASRS is to what we call the low bay, which would be to the right-hand side of the drawing. That corner in there, you see there's some striped lines in there. The question was that an elevation change? And the answer is that's not an elevation change. What that is, it's just a gore striped area to delineate the traffic pattern.
There's also a post indicator valve for the fire suppression lead-in that lies within that gore striped area. And I believe there's block heaters and guardrail as well.
Okay, I just wanted to see what that was.
If we could back up 2 to the beginning of the lighting slides, we can go through those quickly. Thank you.
Good evening, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my name is Giovanni Gamens. I'm part of the Haskell Electrical Design team, and I'll be talking about lighting. Basing on the input from the previous meeting, we looking for solution to solve each of the comment presented to us, and at the same time, we improve the lighting design. In this case, for the auto parking lot, we reduced the height to the top of the pole from 25 feet to 20 feet. We also reoriented the lights to minimize the number of features visible from the west. We changed from aluminum poles to bronze colored poles to minimize reflection of the light on the poles. And we changed the optic from shields to backlight cutoff control for the lights on the western perimeter of the lot. Can you go to the next? Okay, what is the backlight cutoff control? That is an optic solution that directs the light forward, controlling the light trespass. Also, the small optic of the lamp optimize the amount of light that goes from the lamp to the point of light. And in addition, this solution allows wide pole spacing and uniformity on the solution. Can you go to the next one, please? Thank you. Finally, at the new warehouse, the light fixture mounted high on the wall of the ASRS building has been lowered from 25 feet to 20 feet. So those are the improvement that we did in our design based on the input from the last meeting.
Great, thank you, Yvonne. We're gonna move on
Yeah,
to the last.
hold on, Dave, we have a question.
Yes, sir.
Well, are you moving on to another subject, or are you, okay,
Go ahead.
so I'm going to say what I want
Okay.
to say at this point. I'm the person that brought up the issue of lighting, and I don't think that I sufficiently made the case for why people, not just me, should be concerned about it, which is that we live in the Last Green Valley, also known as the Punnabush-Tucket National Heritage Corridor. That designation was given to this region because we're the last dark place between Boston and Washington. And birds fly by following constellations. I think that's astonishing. But what we're doing, having lights go down, even at 20 feet, you're still getting a wide cone on an asphalt thing that doesn't.
Hi, this is Joanne. If someone is speaking, I can't hear anything. I don't know if anyone else can.
We cannot either.
No.
Okay, so I will just keep on going and never mind the beginning. Okay, unless I can tell her myself later. So birds are losing their ability to navigate during their migrations. And I'm not an expert in whether 20-foot stanchion is remarkably better than 25 feet, but as an amateur, I don't think so. It's still a fairly large cone of light. If you go to the mall across, down in Dayville, the pavement is gray at night, and I was complaining to them, so they made their light stanchions a little shorter, but it's still gray asphalt, which I can see from my house 3 miles away, that the constellations that were there during my childhood are gone. Maybe it doesn't matter to me, but I know that it matters to birds. And so I want this to be a more seriously understood issue. I'll shut my mouth now.
And I guess I would just say that what the design team did is they took your comments and they came up with a solution that we think improved things, but still gives the level of light that's needed for safety, et cetera, in terms of the operation of the lot and the facility.
I looked at the two pictures; they looked remarkably similar.
Yeah,
there was just a little light fall off on the grassy area, but the asphalt part itself didn't look that different.
And again, I understand your comments, but I think, when you're dealing with a manufacturing facility, such as this and such as is allowed in the zoning district, there's a certain amount of lighting that you need for safety and operations and stuff, but they have tried to reduce it, to the extent that they can.
So we want to continue?
Yes, I think we're back to David Cody, who I think has the last slide.
Right, 2 slides, thank you. Looking forward to the next slide. I'll be reviewing as you can see here, starting in the upper left-hand corner, the site or street
David,
section.
you're very broken up. Can you try to speak closer to your microphone or a little bit clearer to your microphone?
Is that better?
Yes,
Can
it
you hear
is.
me
Thank
better?
you.
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you, Joe. I'll be reviewing the site section and street section A view, starting from the upper left-hand corner from Upper Maple Street. The idea here is to show the views. First, the one that hits the berm is indicated on the site section, which is referencing the top of berm at the 294, which we will maintain. We also have maintained the tree buffers as indicated here. The higher line shows the reference of the new ASRS area. We've also dashed in the existing grade, which is the dark line, which is combined here on the site section A. The dashed line is the new parking lot, as Stephen was indicated earlier, where we are cutting down into that to create and maintain the berm line, as well as the additional landscaping tree buffer of the trees that we talked through on the site plan. The overall top section view is the overall cross section from Upper Maple that maintains the tree lines as well as the existing berm, the new proposed parking lot, and then the blue area is the new ASRS area for the top section. If you go to the bottom right-hand corner of this sketch for this slide, you will see where this is taken. The site section is just adjacent to the front entrance with those arrows indicating 1 and 2 are the 2 views on the left that indicate view 1, which is represented by the blue arrow, and view 2, which is represented by view 1, which is represented by the blue arrow, and view 2, which is represented. I'm getting an echo.
Yeah.
I'm getting an echo.
Yeah.
Somebody that is not speaking has turned their mic on. Can you hear me better?
Yes.
So the location map in the bottom right-hand corner shows the 2 views. And these were just taken last week that show, if you would, the current conditions at the site with minimal, and that showing the current proposed, where we propose to put the parking lot to not be visible. We go on to the next slide. This will also capture some additional photographs to represent the intent. What we did is we've used on the upper left-hand corner is there's a line shown to the view. This is across the lake. This was shown in the 1115 reference, and we're calling this what we'll call the summer condition where there is a small portion of the ASRS that is viewable from the lake, taken during the summer condition. What we then did just recently, last week, what we'll call a current condition, with the current vegetation the way it is, you can see just over the last year or two, as we've taken these photographs, the height of the trees as well as the shrub and or vegetation, the rest of the entire plant from this view once across from the lake. I've added 2 references here. The one view that cross-references the photo in the upper left-hand corner is the existing 1978 ASRS, and we've indicated the location of the 2013 ASRS, which is currently existing, is not visible by the current tree line and or buffer, if you would. And that'll conclude the site sections and or views at this time.
And Dave, if I could just ask you, the currently proposed ASRS addition will be in the same general location as the 2012 one that's shown with your arrow, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And the best way for the folks on the phone as well as the commission understand that, if you use a line straight across from the top of the ASRs from the 78, there's approximately about 20 feet from the top of that to the top of that tree line. So we do have a little bit of a buffer, especially across from the vantage point that we've taken these as well to show the true condition. So yes, Joe, that is correct.
Okay.
So will the new building be exposed above the tree line?
No. The next slide, please. That'll conclude the presentation from our side. Joe, I'll turn it to you.
Any further questions at this point? If not,
Commissioners? John? Brian?
I was just very quickly going to finish this up in about 2 minutes so you can move on to your other business. But I just wanted to mention there were some questions raised by the public at the last meeting regarding the parking space count. Your regulations express a minimum number of spaces, which I think would have been 402 based on floor area. We're proposing 633, which, as you've heard, is based on the actual 40-year experience operating the facility and knowing what the parking needs are. Your regulations also reference looking at the ITE engineering manual for parking demand ratios, and we did that as well, and I just wanted to mention that that would yield a substantially higher parking count, about I think it would be either 739 or 900, depending on whether it's building square footage or employee head count. So I just wanted to illustrate to you that a thought was given. It's based on real-time needs, and it's substantially less than the ITE would be. And I guess other than that, we hope that we hope you think we've been responsive to the comments and questions from last time, and we consent to continue both the site plan application as well as to keep the special permit hearing open and continue the hearing to your January 18th meeting.
Do we need a motion, a vote? Do we do that on the?
Yes, you would need a motion to, number one, continue the hearing to our next regularly scheduled meeting of Tuesday, January 18th, 2022, and that you could also include that that they've agreed to continue the site plan to that same date of Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. I'm stressing Tuesday because that Monday is a holiday.
Anybody have a motion for that?
So moved.
Have a second?
I'll second it.
John seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Okay.
And that was Brian that made the motion, 'cause my mic was off, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Now I need a motion to continue the meeting. We, some time ago, made a requirement to have a motion beyond 10 o'clock, that we would stop at 10 o'clock. It's been a long time since we've been beyond 10 o'clock, so that's why you're probably not familiar with it.
I'll make a motion to continue the meeting
Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Matthew seconds that. Brian makes the motion. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Okay. Next on the agenda? No. You better not. Zone map change, application number 21-1276, Weld LLC. CGCT Killingly LLC, landowner, 543 Warrigan Road, GIS map 262, lot 20, 19 Lucian Avenue, Killingly, GIS map 262, lot 22. Both general commercial application seeks to change the zone of the subject real estate properties from general commercial zone to light industrial. Somebody going to speak to this application, or?
Their attorney, Mr. Blaisdell, is on our WebEx,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
and I believe the applicants are actually in the back of the room. The last 3 people left. Thank you for being so patient. Mr. Blaisdell, if you want to make your presentation.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to appear remotely. My name is Tim Bleasdale. I'm an attorney with Waller, Smith & Palmer, and I represent Weld LLC, the applicant. I'll try to be as brief and direct as I can tonight. Our application is to rezone 19 Lucian Avenue and 543 Warrigan Road from general commercial to the light industrial district. And we submitted a number of maps with our application that are intended to address different information requirements that are in your regulations. But I think for the sake of brevity tonight, I'll probably only be referring to one of the annotated GIS maps that we submitted. So that's on page 1 of 6 of the maps. It looks like this. It's in your packet. So on that map, we show the existing light industrial district for this area. It's shaded in sort of a tan color there and outlined in dark red. And to the north of that is 19 Lucian Ave and 543 Warrigan Road. And those are the 2 lots that we're proposing to add into the light industrial. And we've outlined them in a dotted red line to indicate what we're adding. So what you can see here is the existing light industrial district without the addition of these 2 lots is just under 10 acres in this area. So the additional acres that we're proposing to add would bring that up to a total contiguous zone of about 12.6 acres, maybe a little bit more than that. The remaining contiguous general commercial zone in that area that will still remain after these 2 lots are taken out exceeds 35 acres. So we're not making a significant change there. And obviously, when you look at this map, you'll notice that there's a little bit of the general commercial that extends up past Lucian Ave across from 543 Warrigan. And that's number 4 Lucian Ave. And I'm sure the commission remembers that we were before you in October with another version of this application that only addressed changing the zone of 543 Warrigan Avenue. And we had a pretty robust discussion about expanding our application to try to include 19 Lucian Ave and 4 Lucian Ave. And so we went back and we've spent about a month trying to accomplish that. And the application that you have before you tonight is a revised application. It's a new application that adds 19 Lucian Ave into the mix there. We weren't able to get 4 Lucian Ave to be included in our application. And the reason for that is sort of technical and legal. As I'm sure the commission knows, state statute says that the commission has authority over the forms of applications and those sorts of things. And if you look at the application that is on the cover sheet of our application packet, you'll see that we have to have the consent of the owner where the applicant is not also the owner. And so what we were able to do was have the owners of 19 Lucian Ave consent to joining our application, but we weren't able to get that consent from the owners of 4 Lucian Avenue. So that's why it's not included here. And I'm sure you'll recall that one of the concerns that the commission had back in October was that by granting this application, 19 Lucian Ave and 4 Lucian Ave would become islands, essentially, of general commercial that were disconnected from the rest of the general commercial zone. And so we've addressed that with 19 Lucian Ave, and obviously it's still a problem with 4 Lucian Ave, and there's really no way for us as an applicant who's not also the owner of that property to do that without their consent. And I know that the commission was concerned that to fix that issue, it would involve investing your staff's time and resources in doing a commission application to change the zone of 4 Lucian Ave. And that's certainly something that the commission has the authority to do without the consent of the owner, whereas we as applicants don't have, as members of the general public don't have the ability to do that. And so we were trying to be respectful and mindful of that burden that is on the commission if you choose to address this issue with 4 Lucian Ave down the road. And so we supplied to your staff, separate from our application tonight, a few draft maps, mock-up maps that might be a jumping off point for the commission to use in the future if you decide to address a zone change on 4 Lucian Ave. And I myself am a member of the Waterford Planning and Zoning Commission, and when I look at the sort of natural geographic boundary here between these different zones being Lucian Ave, I think it also might be appropriate that this is being left to the commission on 4 Lucian Ave, because you could easily choose to simply rezone 4 Lucian Ave into the low density development district, the residential area that surrounds it on 3 sides. It's sort of on that side of Lucian Ave, it's a natural division there. Or using other maps that we've submitted to your staff, you'd be able to rezone that to join this light industrial district. And that's really a policy choice for you as a commission. So that's all I have to say about 4 Lucian Ave. Like I said, it's not part of our application, but I wanted to make sure I addressed that at the outset for the commission. The purpose of our application is to allow light industrial uses at 543 Warrigan Ave and 19 Lucian Ave. That would include any of the uses that are in section 430.2. Some examples for you are the storage, manufacturing, which is what we would like to do at 543 Warrigan Road. Other examples are wholesaling, related storage, office space, printing and publishing, laboratory uses, research and development facilities. So there's an interesting mix there. All of those uses are the sorts of uses that are not necessarily open to the public in the same way that a retail store like Benny's, which used to occupy 543 Warrigan Road, just not being open to the public in the same way is going to generate less traffic. So in terms of impact on the neighborhood, we would expect any of those uses to be a little bit lighter in terms of traffic for the neighborhood. As I mentioned, specifically for 543 Warrigan Road, we're looking for the ability to bring in light industrial manufacturing use under these regulations, specifically metal welding and fabrication. We have a related company called Melting Point Welding and Fabrication that we're hoping to move into that property, and obviously that would be subject to further permitting by this commission. Another purpose of this application is that we're hoping through this to be able to purchase 543 Warrigan Avenue or Warrigan Road and revitalize that property, get that property back into use. It's been unoccupied for quite some time now. As to 19 Lucian Ave, as I sit here tonight, I'm not actually aware of any specific plans that the owners may have for that. But what I will say is it's currently, the only improvement on the property that I'm aware of is a driveway that serves 17 Lucian Ave, which is already zoned light industrial. So it's a driveway crossing general commercial district land into the light industrial that's serving a light industrial use back there. So We think from that perspective, this change for 19 Lucian Ave just really kind of brings the property more closer to its actual current use. So the properties themselves, 543 Oregon Road is just over 2 acres, about 2.1 acres. It's currently fully developed. There's a 22,000 square foot building, an existing large parking lot. 19 Lucian Ave is just over 1 acre, 1.2 acres about, and again, undeveloped except for that driveway, as far as I'm aware. There's a sort of a mature stand of trees on the property, which is nice for the neighbors down there. In our application materials, we've submitted a letter that goes into detail on the different criteria that the commission is supposed to consider in deciding whether or not to grant an application like this. And I'd like to just try to quickly move through that and hit some of the highlights for you. One of the things that the commission has to consider is whether this change would be consistent with the patterns of land use and development in the area. We certainly think it is. If you were to zoom out on this map, I know you can't with what I submitted, but if you were to go into GIS and turn on the zones and zoom out from this image that we've supplied you with, what you'd see is this area is sort of interwoven pockets of light industrial, general commercial, residential, and rural. And so by moving these two properties into that light industrial zone, we're not really fundamentally changing that sort of the nature of how these zones kind of weave together down in that area of town. The light industrial zone itself, in your regulations, it specifically sets it out as a zone that can be located immediately adjacent to residential areas like it would be here. And so we think it's a good fit in that sense as well. So the regulations also require the commission to consider the nature of the land at issue. And we think that, again, both of these lots are well suited to be put to industrial use. So for instance, as I mentioned, 19 Lucian Ave currently basically serving as a driveway to an industrial use. So changing that zone makes sense. 543 Oregon Road already hosts a large building and a large parking lot that can readily be put to use for light industrial manufacturing by my clients. Again, subject to further permitting by this commission. Both of these properties are directly adjacent to the other two existing light industrial district properties here. So we'll create one contiguous space. And one thing that the commission should be aware of as far as 543 Oregon Road goes is that that large building, I have it in my notes as about 22,000 square feet. It actually triggers a requirement in your light industrial regulations that say future use of that property would have to be by special permit. So that gives you a little bit more control down the road in terms of crafting protections for the neighborhood, making sure that there isn't any noise, odors, traffic, anything like that might be bothering the neighbors. And so I wanted to highlight that for you. We think that, to the extent that there are any negative impacts for the neighborhood based on this change, we think they'd be pretty minimal. This application is not seeking to substantially change these properties. That would require further permitting by the commission. And as I just said, for 543 Oregon Road, that would require a special permit. As far as I know, there's no plans to, at this point, change the use of 19 Lucian Ave. And this is not, in my mind, this is not a big jump in terms of the allowable uses on these properties. So it's not like we're going from residential or rural jumping to industrial. These are currently zoned general commercial, and so we're just sort of stepping, maybe one step up to the light industrial uses. The light industrial regulations themselves are, as I mentioned before, crafted to allow this zone to come right up against residential areas. And so you as a commission have built in protections for residential neighbors. So for instance, your regs require that all the uses in that zone be clean, quiet, free of hazardous or objectionable elements such as noise, odor, dust, smoke, and glare. So as far as any concerns the commission has about future uses of these properties, you can rest assured that your regulations already include some protections for the folks living in that neighborhood, other area businesses. So we wanted to highlight that. And I wanted to point out that we think there are some significant positive impacts for the neighborhood. So first and foremost is the revitalization of the underutilized property, specifically the large building at 543 Warrigan Road. It's a highly visible property. It's clear when you drive by that it's empty. We heard at the public hearing in October that some of the neighbors frequently see, young people doing donuts in their cars there. I can tell the commission that when I personally went and walked the property in September, I did find a group of teenagers that were, tailgating in their truck, and they took off when they saw me walking around with the camera. But, I would expect things of that nature that the neighbors are seeing happening in the parking lot, would stop once a business is in there and occupying it. We think that this would also, down the road lead to a reduction in some of the impervious surfaces there. So what I mean by that is when you look at 543 Warrigan Road, it has frontage on both Warrigan and Lucian Ave. And there's very little vegetative screening on the property. There are some small bushes on both roads. And on the Warrigan Road side, there's a grassy area that's about 25 feet, give or take, wide, maybe a little bit more than that. And your regulations for the light industrial district will require any future development there or redevelopment to include a vegetative buffer that's at least 25 feet wide. So for the neighbors there, that's going to be an improvement in screening when we come back and have to meet that requirement, because I believe your requirement specifies something along the lines of evergreen trees, something that's going to provide year-round screening, and that's not something that the neighbors currently enjoy, especially along Warrigan Road. Now on Lucian Avenue, obviously a surveyor would need to measure this, but my field measurement with my tape measure showed that there was not already a 25-foot wide grassy strip on Lucian Avenue where trees could be planted to achieve that 25-foot wide buffer. So at least as to along Lucian Avenue, future use on this property would have to require some reduction in the impervious surfaces of the parking lot on 543 Warrigan Road. So that's going to mean more stormwater infiltrating on the property, and we think that's a benefit to the neighborhood as well. I've mentioned earlier traffic considerations. We think, generally speaking, the uses that are allowed in the light industrial zone, in light industrial district, are going to produce less traffic than would be, generated for a retail store, that could locate in the general commercial the way it is now. Certainly fewer, less traffic than when it was a Benny's store at 543. I do have information about my client's specific business, but since we are supposed to really focus on the uses that are allowed in the light industrial district, I don't want to get into that unless the commission has specific questions about that. So I'll pass over that, but I just want you to know that I do have that information available if the commission is interested. The commission also has to consider the plan of conservation and development. And in our letter, we highlighted 3 sections where we think that this application advances some goals or policies that are contained in the POCD. Specifically section 3.2, which addresses economic issues. There's a goal in there to increase the quantity, quality, and diversity of employers in town. One of the specific purposes of this is, if we're granted our zone change on 543 Warrigan Road, my clients intend to purchase that property and move their welding and metal fabrication business to that site. So that would certainly bring a new employer, a new business to town, and further that POCD goal. The other 2 goals that I wanted to highlight from the POCD sort of dovetail together. So that's in section 3.5, your section that addresses land use policies and goals. that contains a goal of encouraging redevelopment and revitalization of properties rather than expanding development into rural areas. I'm sorry, did someone have a question?
No.
Oh, I heard
No.
I heard some feedback.
Nope, you're
Okay.
all set.
Okay, and so the other POCD goal that sort of dovetails into is section 3.6, addressing natural resource issues. It has a goal of protecting and maintaining the undeveloped natural resources in rural areas of your town. And so we sort of see our proposal here as something that's going to help facilitate those goals by, we're trying to redirect our development and opening of a business to this underutilized property rather than finding, some virgin piece of land and breaking ground there. So we think that those are both in line with your POCD as well. So it's sort of a brief summary. We think this would be good for Killingly. We think it'd be good for the area. It's going to help bring your light industrial district in this area up above that 10-acre threshold that your regulations suggest, for a contiguous zone. This is going to bring the use of 19 Lucian Ave closer to conforming to the zone that it's in, as well as help facilitate the revitalization of 543 Oregon Road. So we just generally think it's going to be great for the area, and we hope that the commission can approve it and that we'll be able to move forward with our sale. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions the commission has. I just want to mention, though, that as I've been listening tonight, I've noticed that for the video link, it's very difficult to hear members of the commission unless you speak very directly into your microphone. Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions? John? Brian?
No questions.
Birch?
No.
Matt?
I just have a question regarding, I believe it's 19 Lucian Ave, right? So right now it's densely wooded. I was looking at it on the GIS map. Is there intent moving forwards that any of that will be removed to be developed into something, or that a building gets placed in that portion of the property? It's just something to...
So,
My name's Peter
It
Deary.
appears to me that Peter Deary, who is one of the owners of that property, may have just walked up to the podium.
He did, yep.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, my
Kelly
name is
answer.
Peter Deary. I own 19 Lucian Ave. We have no plans to do anything with 19 Lucian Ave. We've owned it for over 20 years, and we have no plans for it right now.
Okay.
And if I could just add to that, I would just say that to the extent that a future application came down the pike, 10, 15 years from now for 19 Lucian Avenue, assuming that your regulations still have that vegetative buffer requirement in there, I think it's the 25 feet between that and residential areas or general commercial areas, the mature trees within that buffer zone would likely be retained or something similar.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the only thing that I have is that we did have 3 comments that came in today through the email. Again, and I don't know.
You want to read them into the record?
Yeah, I'll just give a very brief outline. My only problem is I cannot tell if these people are Killingly residents or Plainfield residents that have dealt with the owners, because they didn't give me an address. One was from an Allison Therian. She wrote in support of the application. Just basically saying, please add this letter to the commission's record at the public hearing on this application. I support this application because I believe it would be good for Killingly and the neighborhood. This application will help a new business, Melting Point Welding Fabrication, relocate to Killingly and help revitalize a long vacant building at 543 Warregan Road. The building's been empty and unused for a long time, so this will be a good thing. Thank you for considering my comments, and I ask you that you please grant application 211274. The other one I've got is from I believe it's Raylette Burkhardt. This person works for Plainfield Renewable Energy and writing in support of the application. And it's just basically the exact same letter. It's a form letter. I support this application because I believe it would be good for Kinley and the neighborhood. This application will help a new business, Melting Point Welding and Fabrication LLC, relocate to Kinley and will help revitalize the long vacant building at 543 War Regan Road. The building has been empty and unused for a long time, so this will be a good thing. And it says Plainfield Renewable Energy has done business with Melting Point Welding and Fabrication LLC for many years and have always found them to be professional and courteous. And again, thank you for considering my comments, and I ask you that you grant the application. The other one I have is from a Christian Algieri, credit manager at Central Steel Supply Company, to whom it may concern. This letter confirms that the account of Melting Point Welding and Fabrication is in good standing and with all balances paid in full through 10/1/2021. They've been a customer with them since 2011, and they're an absolute pleasure to work with. She can attest to their professionalism, work ethic, and overall merit. Those are the 3 public comments that I got in.
Any comments from the public for this application?
Jill St. Clair, Economic Development. I'm in support of this application. That building is well over 40 years old, and the changing nature of retail is no longer suitable for the scale and size of the building and the way the loading docks are set up. So I support this applicant and a change of zoning.
Jill, did you get any input from this commission?
We have discussed this parcel.
Economic Commission? I'm sorry?
We have discussed this parcel, and we have tried to attract other retailers to that location, but it's too big for current retail.
So the commission had no input, is my point?
No.
Commissioners, any other questions? Can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I make that motion.
Second? John Sarantopoulos makes the second. Verge makes the motion to close. Any further discussion? Anybody? Roll call, please.
If this is just for the closure of the hearing? Okay.
I'll make that motion.
Roll call. You did already.
Oh, okay.
All right. I'm going to do the roll call because for some reason our recording secretary.
No, I'm here. I
Okay.
didn't push the right button. Sorry. Brian Card,
Yes.
Van Lawrence.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
John Sarantopoulos.
Yes.
Matthew Wendorf.
Yes.
Keith Thurlow.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Unfinished business. David Cody, Frito-Lay landowner, Upper Maple Street. That's been continued. That's number 21-1273. Zone map change application number 21-1276, Weld LLC, 543 Warrigan Road, GIS map 262, lot 20 and 19 Lucian Avenue, GIS map 262, lot 22, both general commercial district. Application seeks to change the zone of real estate from general commercial to light industrial. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve zone map change number 21-1276 from general commercial to light industrial. I believe this revitalizes some abandoned property and returns it productive economic use. I believe it's also suitable in this area for development to light industrial with minimal impact to the area. It does provide for a contiguous zone of greater than 10 acres, which is consistent with our rules. And it does implement responsible redevelopment versus impacting, new green undeveloped areas.
A motion for date?
January 18th, 2022 at 12:01 a.m.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Motion by Brian, second by Verga. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Still muted.
Sorry. Van Lawrence.
Yes.
John Sarantopoulos.
Yes.
Matthew Wendorf.
Yes.
Brian Card.
Yes.
And Keith Thurlow.
Yes. Pass.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Brian, Joanna, and Peter for sticking it out with us tonight.
Okay, zone map, special permit application
Good night.
number 05868, request for release of bond, Ernest Jolly and Son, 605 Providence Pike, Killenly, JS map 224, lot 14, 170 acres, rural development zone, all phases of work completed. Engineer is saying it's okay, we're all set now?
Yes, Jonathan went out, and he wrote an email, he's just following up on the special permit application, request for release of bond for 605 Providence Pike. He spoke with Mr. Vance regarding the 2 pieces of equipment on site. Mr. Vance explained that those were his and he was storing them there. The truck on our property appeared to be vandalized, and it was, along with a piece of equipment from Ernest Jolly and Son. The police were involved, and Mr. Vance is working with his insurance company. I believe that's why, part of the reason why they're still there. I reviewed the status of the properties with Mr. Vance, as the original application stated the intention of returning the property to its natural state at the end of the operation and weather, and he felt all work had been done. Mr. Vance was happy with it and plans to let the back area grow while maintaining the roadway and keeping a small portion as grass. The recommendation from staff is to return the bond in full to Ernest Jolly and Sons, Inc.
Okay, can I have a motion?
You have the motion to that effect.
Can I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Verga makes the motion, John Serentopoulos makes the second. Any further discussion? Do we need a roll call for this one? No?
No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? None. Okay,
Mr. Chairman?
yes.
I'd be more than happy to stay for the, right to the bitter end with all of you all, but
I think we're set with you.
Staff wanted me to stay for the public hearings, but I didn't want to just step out and walk out. So if
No,
I'm
we're
all
fine.
set, then I'll wish you.
I appreciate your participation.
Merry Christmas for those who celebrate it, and Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank
You
you.
as well. Good night.
You're not
Happy
getting out
winter
before. I'd like to
solstice.
make a motion to.
Let's that make a motion to doctor's pay? Oh.
We're gonna beat them.
Site plan application 21-1275, Frito-Lay, continued. New business subdivision application number 17-1185, Frank Swaby. Airport Road request of bond release as construction of improvements meet town standards.
Hi, this is Joanne. I can barely hear you. Sorry.
He just read everything off for the.
I just read for the next application, new business number 1, application 17-1185. Can I have a motion, please?
This has been completed to the satisfaction of the town of Kinley, so again, they're returning a bond.
So this is nothing. I mean, we can just do this and not sweat over it.
Right.
Okay.
Town engineer got a letter in your packet,
Right, okay.
$31,000.
So I make a motion to approve subdivision application 17-1185
Release
to release the bond.
Bond release, yes.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Okay. Special permit application number 21-1277, American Storage Centers, 551 Westcott Road, GIS map 214, lot 5, 3.8 acres, general commercial zone. Construction of 6 new buildings and conversion of an existing building to establish a self-storage facility. Is it complete?
It appears to be complete at this time, yes.
So I will make a motion to receive and schedule for public hearing on Tuesday, January 18th, 2022.
Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Matthew seconds, Verga makes the motion. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Zone map change application number 21-1278, Douglas Construction, Jim Vance, landowner, and Laurel A. Horn, applicant and landowner, 605 Providence Pike, GIS map 224, lot 14, 177 acres, RD, and 613 Providence Pike, GIS map 224, lot 13, 4.6 acres, RD. Request to change zone from rural development general commercial. It's a different lot
Yeah.
because they've added
They've-
land to it from the first denial, so normally otherwise it would be a 1-year period, so. Can I have a motion, please? Is it ready?
Yes.
So I make a motion to receive and schedule for a public hearing on Tuesday, January 18th, 2022.
Can I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
John Sarantopoulos seconds, Verga makes the motion. Any discussion?
So I just will throw out, yeah, they added one little lot, but to me, it's still generally the same application, so.
We,
But I
believe
believe-
We talked to
I believe
this-
our
the attorney-
opined upon it, who ran out the door.
Yeah.
we spoke about this at the beginning,
Yes.
and yes, it's not what we would have done normally in the past, but he says it's,
He says it's different.
it says it's fine.
He opined. Just
He
throwing
actually
it out.
says that even if it came in again, they thought he would have to take it. So,
Okay.
so laws have changed or something, I don't know. Okay, it's ready, it's scheduled. Somebody want to make that motion?
I thought the
We did.
motion was
He
made.
made the motion.
Yeah.
Discussion.
Oh, we're on
I
discussion,
thought, yeah,
good.
this is discussion. So it's being recommended that we reconsider this. Okay.
No, it's a new application.
It's a new
not
application,
reconsider, it's a
that
new
we accept the
application.
new application, is that
Yeah,
correct?
yes,
Okay.
yes, sir.
All right.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Okay. Adoption of minutes, we don't have them next time.
No, they'll do it.
Workshop discussion.
That's in February.
The zoning regulations. So you're going to have words for us for February?
I'll have it for February.
Huh?
What?
She's already had words for us tonight.
Is she gonna spank us too?
No.
So was that a yes? I'm just,
With the work's gonna, everything you requested will be done in February. When I realized we were getting so much,
okay.
everything for
5
January,
Mile-
there was just no way.
5 Mile River Overlay District discussion continued at the 15th. List of Planning and Zoning Commission meeting dates is in the packet. Anybody on departmental reports? Anybody have any questions?
What, don't we have to approve the calendar? Technically?
Yeah,
Yes, no.
somebody want to make a motion to approve the calendar?
I thought we always did. That's
We
what
do,
we have.
you're right.
All right, make a motion to approve the calendar.
Just give me a second, please.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions? Economic Development Director report. Jill, are you out there?
She
Jill,
said-
are you still on?
She said see you later, that's why it's
Huh?
only us two there.
Okay, Town Council Liaison? Now that we know who you are.
Yes.
I'm sorry about that.
So,
Speak pretty close.
okay. The new town council was sworn in at the December special meeting. And last week's meeting, there was a question about how we can get the word about referendum votes, that there wasn't enough information, and we had a poor voter turnout. There were only up a little over 500 people that showed up for the referendum vote for such a huge project, $27 million for the Westcott Avenue.
What's the project?
The renovation of the
Oh.
Westcott,
Okay.
Westfield Avenue.
So can we assume that the dollars are being used appropriately and therefore we should support it because it's our school system?
Well, it passed.
It's already
It's all
passed.
done.
It's all done.
You missed.
I
It was
No
the.
say anymore.
30 now, I don't really care.
Well, you should care because.
Oh, yeah, spare me.
She don't care about a
I
driveway,
threw
so
away
that
a
doesn't
decade
matter.
of my life on that, so.
She don't care about a driveway, so that don't matter.
And the only new business pretty much from last week's town council meeting was a question of doing on the dump, putting solar field there. So
That sounds like a good place for it.
Yeah, because it's unusable property, because it's a capped dump
Yeah.
site.
I think the main concern on that one is if there's a place, a location where they can actually tie into the grid from there.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the one issue that they've got.
But
Last
isn't,
time the council discussed that too. There was a cost from that site to Route 6. All new power lines had to be put in there.
but isn't that the power companies?
I think I remember $1 million was the cost of that alone. If I remember correctly.
Then you got all the new power, solar farms right on, and you got now on Route 6, you got all those new solar farms.
Well, that's why they were saying that it wasn't usable, that particular site, back 7, 8 years ago.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
Yes,
Yeah,
dear.
I'll make a motion to adjourn
Second?
at 10:44
Yes.
p.m.
Oh, my God.
Second
Second?
and yes.
Somebody's gotta say second.
Second, I did, second.
Oh,
and
you
They
said
all
yes, I
seconded.
didn't hear
I was
second.
preempting your vote.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So be it.
You don't have to vote on a motion to adjourn.
Okay, but we do have.